I should begin by saying this is a true story, and as of writing this happened 6 months ago in mid-November of 2017. I was working at Chick-fil-A in my hometown in New Mexico. It's only a small town, with 5,000 people at the most, but that's enough background. It all started when I was called in to cover the night shift for a new employee who had not shown up for work. This was the third shift in a row, and my manager called me. I didn't mind going in because money is money, and I knew the other fellow employees I'd been friends with for a while were working, so I thought the time would go by pretty quick. Beyond them, there were 3 other staff members working as well, but I didn't know them very well. They'd only started in the last few months. I hadn't really worked up the courage to interact with them just yet. I'll assign them names for this story: Alex, Luke, and Eric. My 2 friends are Lucy and Sam. To be clear, Alex was the manager. That night in particular, things were a little strange. We didn't see anywhere near as many customers as we usually did, but I didn't mind. Maybe the workload would be a bit lighter that way, although the shift would be longer because of it. At around 11 o'clock, Luke and Alex walked out and went home, leaving Eric, Sam, Lucy, and myself to hold down the fort during the last hour of the night shift. Then, to our surprise, there was an influx of customers. In the span of 10 minutes, we'd served 20 customers, and it got a bit rushed. During the rush, Eric accidentally hurt himself, burning his hand on the grill. Lucy had to take him to the hospital, leaving me and Eric to finish serving the others, clean up, and close up at 12, when we were due to close. Apart from the influx of customers, everything went normally, except we were spread thin, and we had to stay behind an extra half hour to clean up after we had closed. Once we finished cleaning up, Eric left, and I closed things down for the night. I'd been working there for 2 years, so I guess Sam thought he could trust me to do it. Anyway, I locked the door and proceeded to walk to my car. But before I could even get to my car, I felt something hit me in the back of the head. The next thing I knew, I was waking up in a lounge chair. I tried to get up, but I couldn't move at all. The only thing I could compare that to was sleep paralysis. At this point, I was beginning to panic. 1,000 things ran through my head. Who did this? Why? Why can't I move? You know, the basics when you wake up in that kind of situation. I started to try and yell for help, but all that came out was an unintelligible mumble, kind of like someone speaking when they just had a stroke. It was at that point I heard a voice. Good, you woke up. My eyes darted to where the voice had come from. They were just outside of my range of vision, considering I couldn't even move my head or any muscle for that matter. By then, I was absolutely terrified. A million questions, a million thoughts rushed through my mind. Then, the person who had been talking walked out into the open. They were big. It was Eric, standing there with a surgical face mask. His eyes looked sinister, and he had a scalpel in his hand. I started to freak out. He proceeded to say, "Been wanting to do this for months." Without a second thought, he took the scalpel to my arm and started to slice, and it looked as if he had done it before. The pain was unbearable, but I couldn't move, just whimper. Then, thank God, sirens and lights. It was the police. Eric stood up with the knife, unsure of what was going on, and in seconds the police had kicked the door down. In a flash, with Eric unwilling to drop his scalpel, the police shot him. Not long after, the paramedics arrived. The police had managed to stop the bleeding and had realized he had drugged me, a substance to prevent me from running and possibly bleeding out too. Perhaps he wanted me to watch him remove the flesh from my own body. I would later find out the only reason I was alive was because Lucy and Sam had returned to the store and noticed my car was still there. They proceeded to watch the security footage to find out where I went, and they saw that I'd been struck in the head by Eric. They called the cops right away. I also found out I was not his first victim. The person whose shift I had been covering was the first. He had missed his shifts because Eric had apparently killed him. Creep in my living room. From Anonymous. About 5 years ago, I was living in a small rural town in an apartment building that really had no business being where it was. It was about 3 miles out of town, down a country road with not a lot of houses on it. That being said, it was always quiet, besides the occasional drunk neighbor. It was a normal day. I'd worked third shift, so I slept when I got off work, unless I didn't have work the following night. On August 7th, a day I'll remember forever, I got off work, came home, and decided to just take a short nap because I had to run some errands that day. I woke up and got dressed and went to get in my car when I was stopped by my neighbor, Tyler. Tyler asked me what I was doing the night before. He explained he had seen me outside my apartment, messing with one of my window screens. I assured him I was at work the night before, and it was probably just some drunk idiot. I went on about my day, did what I had to do, and got back home around 8 p.m. I went inside and put my groceries away, and I decided to watch some TV. Honestly, I can say I'd forgotten about the whole thing by then. Between 11 and midnight, I decided to go to bed. I turned my TV off and walked towards the stairs. I made it about halfway up when I heard a loud bang come from the living room where I just was. I stood still for about 30 seconds or so, and that's when I decided to keep going up the stairs. Not 5 seconds after that, I heard the sound of my living room window practically exploding. Now, I'm a big guy, 6'4" and 280 pounds. That being said, I have zero tolerance for someone coming into my home. In my mind, they would take one look at me and run away. That wasn't the case. I ran down the stairs to see what was going on, and sure enough, there was a man about halfway through my window. I froze simply because I'd heard stories 100 times like this, but now it was happening to me. He hit the floor, stood up, and we locked eyes. The only thing that came out of my mouth was, "Get the hell out of my house." He had other plans. We stood there for what felt like hours just staring at each other. He had this paralyzing smile on his face. That's when I noticed the knife in his hand. I said out loud, "You take one step towards me, I'll kill you." He stayed still and said back, "If you were at work tonight, this wouldn't have happened." Right then, I knew this man was going to kill me, or at least try. I turned, ran up the stairs, made it to my bedroom, and slammed the door. My door doesn't lock, unfortunately, but I decided I'd be safe in here with my Smith & Wesson .45 that stays on my nightstand beside me. I dialed 911, telling the dispatcher what was going on. I can still hear her response to this day. "If your bedroom door opens before officers get to your house, you're within your legal rights to protect yourself." So now in my mind, it's game time. I thought to myself, "Open that door. I dare you. You're done." I couldn't hear anything downstairs, so I sat there in silence. About 5 minutes went by and I hear the police arrive. I opened my window and yelled out. I didn't know if he was still downstairs or not. They told me to stay put until they got to me. I threw my keys out the window so they could enter. Then I heard my front door open, and the police yelled, "Drop the knife! Get on the ground!" I would say another 2 minutes went by, and an officer shouted that I was good to come out. I went downstairs as they were taking him to the car. The female officer told me that when they came in my front door, he was sitting in the living room on my couch, just not doing anything. That really freaked me out. What was he doing? Why was he in my house? I now live about 40 miles away and haven't had any problems since. but this event still gives me chills. I guess all I can say is to arm yourself. You never know what might happen. In the case of this guy, it seemed he knew when I worked and thought I was gone that day. But why he just waited downstairs with a knife, I guess I don't know. Maybe he wasn't coming to rob me. Maybe he wanted to break into my house, wait for me to get off work, and stab me. Mom's Ghost Story. From Anonymous. This is a story my mom told me and my siblings. My mom used to work in an office building as a janitor, along with several other employees. On this night, she agreed to work the late shift and cover for a friend. She usually worked in the mornings and was almost always done by midday. She was assigned the job of cleaning the top floor, after which she would work her way down until about halfway. Before my mom had taken that job, some of her coworkers, who had been there way before she had, told her that the 8th floor of the building was haunted by a ghost that was said to cry horribly at around 12 a.m., startled but not too fazed by it. My mom just thought it was her new coworkers trying to scare her. After all, she was new and had only been there for a couple of weeks. She'd also told me that each floor had a dial that controlled the lights, and you had to set it to a certain time, after which it would reset, and all the lights would turn off one by one. She usually took about an hour on each floor, after which she would continue on to the next. Once she had finished up on the 9th floor, she made her way down to the 8th floor. There, she set the timer for an hour and began to clean. About 55 minutes in, she told me that, all of a sudden, she heard one of the most horrific, spine-chilling screams she had ever heard in her life, coming from outside the hallways. It seemed to originate from one of the offices she was cleaning. Out of fear, she panicked, dropping all her things, and she ran for the elevator. From behind her, she could hear loud cries from a woman, something you would only imagine you'd hear in a horror film. As she desperately ran for the elevator, the lights she had set for an hour began to turn off one by one, leaving a trace of darkness behind. When she finally made it out, she made a phone call and quit the next day. I see dead people. From Anonymous. I live in a small town in Kentucky where nothing really happens. I'm a 22-year-old volunteer 911 operator, and I also have a sort of gift for seeing and hearing spirits. This happened around 4 years ago, and it's still going on today. I was working a late shift and decided to clock out a little early. I packed up my stuff and told my supervisor I was heading home. But then, one of the other volunteers came running in, telling us that a woman's car had been found abandoned, and the lady was nowhere in sight. The police went from place to place looking for this woman. Let's call her Krista. Krista had apparently been driving home on the BG, and the police say that her car must have broken down. Now, fast forward a year later, no one had seen or heard from Krista since that night she went missing. People in our town began to talk about how she must be dead, or maybe she ran away. The police did a full investigation and came up with nothing. Everyone suspected that her boyfriend Beau had something to do with her disappearance, but the police couldn't prove it. Now, all that happened about 4 or 5 years ago, and you're probably wondering what that has to do with me. Well, a few months back, I started to have these nightmares of a woman whose car broke down. She went to go look for help, but was abducted. Sound familiar? Well, it should, because at the time, I had no idea that Krista's car was broken down and that they believed she went to find help. I only knew that a woman's car was found on the side of the road. As time went on, the nightmares grew worse and worse. I kept having them, and each one had more and more details. The last one I had was of 2 men burying a body in the woods. I believe that Krista was murdered. and she's showing me where her killers buried her body. The Clown in the Elevator, from Alexis D. I now live in a big city after moving from a small town a few months ago. I attend college, and I'm working to get my bachelor's degree in criminal justice. I live with my mother and 2-year-old son in an old apartment building we just moved into. I thought the apartment building looked safe, but what happened to me about a week ago has changed my mind. I work the graveyard shift, going to work at 5:30 p.m. and usually getting off at 4 a.m. It was a couple of nights after Halloween, and my mom was at the apartment watching my son. A friend from work sometimes gives me a ride home, and he had just dropped me off. Being a young female and it being dark out in a big city is why he usually walks me to the door. I tell him thanks, then I reach for my key because the entrance doors of my apartment building are usually locked after 10 p.m., and tenants are only allowed to get in after hours. As I unlocked the door, I noticed that the knob turned, and the door was already unlocked. Funny, I thought to myself. The entrance doors to this place are never open like that. As I walked in, I decided to take the elevator. I got inside and put my key into my purse. With my head down, putting my key back, I suddenly heard someone step into the elevator with me. I lifted my head, and I got startled big time. There stood a man in a full clown outfit. The outfit was blue with white stripes going up and down. He wore huge blue clown shoes, a blue curly clown wig, along with a red nose and blue and red makeup, forming a smile. However, he did not have an actual smile on his face. His expression was nothing but a deep, blank stare. The elevator doors closed, and I say good evening to him, being the nice person I was. Suddenly, his deep, blank stare turns into a sinister look. At me. As the elevator starts going up, I think to myself, what in the world is he doing in this building at this hour? Was someone having a party? But birthday parties usually don't go until 5 a.m., especially if it's a kid's birthday party, where clowns would often be present. I also noticed he was carrying a bag, which I didn't notice when he first stepped into the elevator. As he looked at me with that sinister look, he bent down to get something from that bag right when the elevator stopped at the 6th floor, the floor where my apartment was. The elevator doors open up, and I start stepping out, saying, "Have a nice morning," to him. As I say this, he looks up, and the sinister look turns into an even more sinister smile. He grabs something out of his bag and stands up. What he grabbed turned out to be a huge kitchen knife. I scream then, running from the elevator down the hallway, and I kid you not, this clown man chases me with that knife. I ran as fast as I could, being chased, the man laughing like a lunatic. Finally, I make it to my room and quickly grabbed my keys, opening the door, just as he reached me with the knife. I slam the door in his face and go straight to the phone to call 911. After I call the cops, I look out the peephole on my door, and I don't see anyone out there. My mom wakes up, and I tell her what happened and why I called the cops. When they arrive, the sinister clown is nowhere to be found in the building. The cops don't think I'm lying, though, because in the building right next to ours, a man had been spotted with the same kind of clown suit. He fit my description. A few nights ago, in the same neighborhood I live in, there was a murder in one of the houses. A woman was strangled to death, and a witness even said a clown was spotted in the area. Luckily, the police promised to patrol the area, and they continued to check the apartment building. So, creepy clown, please don't come near me again. Lady in the White Shorts, from M. Kintz. I live in Northwest Florida, and I work at the airport. I've been there for 20 years, primarily working the graveyard shift, as a toll booth cashier. During the night, I use a handheld computer to enter letters and numbers from license plates for lost ticket purposes. Sometimes my manager assigns me to go to the garage for inventory, and I always feel uneasy about the 4th level. One night, as I was inputting information into my handheld, I looked up and noticed a woman standing near the edge of the garage. She was wearing a short-sleeved baby blue shirt and white shorts. She didn't move or look back, and her shoulder-length black hair framed her face. I couldn't help but wonder why she was wearing shorts when it was around 42 degrees outside. Nevertheless, I shrugged it off, continuing to enter in more license plates. A few seconds later, when I glanced up again, she was gone. I didn't hear any footsteps, and the sliding door that led into the lobby by the elevator didn't make its usual squeaking sound. I immediately informed my managers and coworkers about what I'd seen, but they looked at me as if I was crazy. Since then, whenever I go to the 4th level, I make sure to check my surroundings more attentively.
This happened back in 2010. I was working in a hotel in a suburban area. Nice place. When I first started there, I was both a PT front desk clerk and a PT night auditor. For those of you not in hospitality, I closed the day out on the computers on the overnight shift. I had just been promoted to a day job and had a week left at the front desk before I was switching to my Monday through Friday gig, and it was just like any other night. At about 3 a.m., I received a phone call. The guy sounded my age, mid-20s, and attempted to strike up a conversation with me. I have to give my name when answering the phone, so he gets my name, of course, and starts asking me personal questions. Do you have a boyfriend? Would you want to go out for a drink, etc.? Which were harmless, but nevertheless I tell him I'm hanging up as I had a job to do. He wouldn't give me a name. Instead he said, "Why don't you call me John?" I hang up and finish my shift. The next night at about 3:30 a.m., I receive another phone call from John. He started off with asking me out for a drink again, to which I declined and hung up the phone. He called back about 5 times that night, each time getting more lewd in his comments, and just tried to keep me talking. He ended his last call with the phrase, "I see you like singing karaoke. I love doing that. Let's go out together sometime." He found me on Twitter. I had just gone out for a few nights prior with my friends and posted about it. I asked him how he got my full name, and he wouldn't tell me. I hung up again, and he was done for that night. I deleted my Twitter and Foursquare pages, and when my boss came in at 7 a.m., I told him what had been going on. We told my GM, and my security guard put it into his record. I only worked 2 overnights a week, luckily, but when I came back the next week, so did he. The phone calls started at around 3 a.m. and lasted for an hour or so, but this time was a little different. John was angry that I had deleted my accounts so he couldn't keep an eye on me and make sure I wasn't cheating on him. I told him that I'm not answering the phone anymore. My security guard will be taking all of my calls going forward. The phone was quiet for about 10 seconds, and then he screamed, "You're going to be with me whether or not you like it. I'm coming for you," and hung up the phone. I, of course, called the police. Luckily, I had my security guard there, so I wasn't completely alone. But it must have been a slow night because it took the cops mere minutes to get there. I called my night shift supervisor who left at 11 p.m., and he managed to calm me down. One cop was nice enough to stay until my shift was done. And with that, I told my boss that even though I had a week left of overnights, I couldn't and wouldn't do it. Thankfully, they understood, and I moved to daytime hours, as well as sent an email out to everyone telling them that anyone who called for me was sent directly to the GM. Thankfully, everything stopped after that, minus a few phone calls the security guy got for about a week. He told the guy that I had quit because of him, and the calls stopped. This happened in the fall of 1993 when I was 20 years old. In the interest of context, this was before I started college, and I was working in the material prep department of a plastics factory on the night shift. I was the only woman in the department, and my male coworkers were initially skeptical that I could handle the job, but I proved myself and earned their respect. It was hard work, but on the plus side, it also put me in the best shape of my life. It was also about this time that I dumped my abusive boyfriend. He was verbally, emotionally, and physically abusive, as well as an alcoholic. This fact, more than anything, is probably why I got myself into this situation in the first place. I had just gotten off of work, and it was about 1:30 a.m. My car was running on fumes, so I stopped at a local gas station to fill up. While I was pumping gas, a woman about my age approached me looking nervous and scared. She said that she had been at her boyfriend's house and they had a fight. She walked up to the gas station to use the payphone and call a friend to pick her up. On her way to the station, a car pulled up as she was walking and the guys inside started catcalling and harassing her. With a slight movement of her head, she indicated a car that was parked off to the side by the gas station dumpsters. I saw a large light green car, like a Caddy or a Lincoln, with at least 2 or 3 shadowy figures inside. She said they threatened her, and she was too scared to call her friend and wait. The woman was neat, well-dressed, and didn't seem high or drunk or anything like that. She just seemed really nervous and freaked out, so I didn't even hesitate. I finished pumping my gas and told her to hop in the car, that I'd take her home. At that time on a weeknight, there was little traffic, so I booked it right out of the gas station and asked her where she lived. She kept twisting around in the seat to see if the car was behind us, and when I asked her to put her seatbelt on, she ignored me and kept looking for the car. I assumed she was just scared. A few blocks down the road, however, I noticed she was looking around the car, and she started asking me about money.
"Where's your purse? Where's your bag? I need money. You need to give me some money."
My stomach sank. I have this woman in my car, and now she's gonna rob me? But when I thought about it, robbery just didn't make much sense. I was driving a 1985 Chevette and was wearing my work clothes, a ratty t-shirt and jeans with combat boots. I did not look like a person with a lot of cash, primarily because I wasn't a person with a lot of cash. She twisted around the seat again and started yelling.
"There they are! There they are!"
She didn't sound scared anymore. I checked the rear view, and sure enough, the light green car is right behind me. She started cackling and bouncing up and down in the seat. She's laughing like crazy, opening the glove box, looking in the back for a bag or purse, telling me all the messed up shit these guys are planning to do to me. Now, if I had been smart, I would have just driven to the police station. Actually, if I had been very smart, I would have called the cops from the gas station and waited with her until they arrived. That would have been the intelligent thing to do. Unfortunately, none of this crossed my mind until later. In the moment, I just got really angry. I realized 3 key things all at once. There was an intersection up ahead, with cars on either side waiting to cross, and the light had just turned yellow. I had a spare box cutter that I kept for work in the driver's side door compartment. The crazy bitch still hadn't put on her seatbelt. I didn't think. I floored it and passed under the yellow light just as it turned red. I glanced back to see if the green car was still behind me, but the cross traffic at the intersection had just started to move, and they hadn't caught up. The bitch started yelling. I slammed on the brakes and she hit the dash and windshield with a solid and viciously satisfying crack. When she rebounded to the passenger seat, I had the box cutter in her face and was screaming some serious batshit crazy stuff. I can't remember exactly what I said, but it was along the lines of, "Get the f*** out of my car before I cut off your face and make you eat it." The crazy screaming and box cutter combo worked. She grabbed blindly at the handle and popped the door open. I started shoving and punching her until she tumbled out the door to the curb. I stomped on the gas, got to the next turn and squealed around it with the passenger's door still open. I made a few more turns because I was afraid that the green car might catch up to me. After a little while, I stopped to close the passenger door, and then I cut across town and got onto the highway to go home. I was on the highway for about 5 minutes before the shake started. I pulled off to the shoulder to calm down, and then I drove home. I told my sister I was living with her temporarily after the breakup with my ex about everything that had just happened. She wrapped me in a tight bear hug while simultaneously yelling about how stupid I was for not going to the police. I've never been so glad to be yelled at in my life. I had just finished my first year of university and had taken up a position as a taxi dispatcher with my boyfriend's cousin's taxi company. For the first week and a half, I worked mainly day shifts until the owner decided to extend the hours to 24/7, and I was the lucky employee who would be covering 3 of the 4 of these shifts a week. The next week, I was working my first night shift alone. The driver would be out all night looking for fares, which meant a lot of the night would be just me. I wasn't uneasy working such a shift by myself since I had worked at a 24-hour coffee shop and was used to midnight shifts. It was also a Wednesday or Thursday night, so it wasn't very busy. The best part about this job was that my boss let me use the internet to play video games on my laptop in the office. From the computer desk in the office, I could see the front door, a portion of the front desk, and most of the front windows, so I could keep a close eye on what was happening outside. Plus, the bell above the door always alerted me to a new customer, so I couldn't be caught off guard if I got too into my game. On this particular night, I was working with a taxi driver named Dave. Dave is about 6'3" and 300 pounds, plus he suffers from severe health problems, one of which made all of his movements slow and painful. He definitely wasn't Mr. Fitness or the type of person who would be able to defend himself or others very easily. Sometime during the early hours of the morning, around 1:30 to 2 a.m., Dave gets a call to go pick up someone in a town about 15 minutes away. He gathered up his stuff and drove into the night, while I headed into the office and continued playing my video game. About 15 minutes later, I caught something over the top of my laptop. My mind froze. I could hear panting, and in the reflection of the window I could see someone sitting in one of the waiting chairs. I walked to the doorway that connects the front room with the office. Some guy with a massive rat tail had managed to ninja his way into the office and was now sitting in one of the chairs with his face buried in his hands, panting heavily. He was dirty, sweaty, and sounded like he had just run a marathon. Now, the rat tail should have tipped me off, but I found it more hilarious than frightening. A few moments passed and I finally built up the courage to ask him if he needed a cab. He didn't respond at first. I asked him again, and he looks up at me. I took a step back into the office. His face was scratched and covered in blood from the wound on the top of his head. I was shocked and immediately offered assistance to him. He replies with, "I'm fine. I don't need no help. I just want to go home." I asked him if he needed a cab and, if so, where he was going. He told me he lives about 20 minutes away and wants Dave to take him home. After that, shit started to get weird. I called over to Dave using the radio to tell him that there was a fare in the office and that he wanted a ride. He told me he'd be another 10 minutes or so. My hand was on the phone the entire time in case this guy made any sudden movements. Instead of going back into the office, I decided it was best to stay out front where there are 2 great big bay windows that make it easy to see what is happening inside the taxi office. I didn't feel as though he was a threat at all, but he seemed really angry at something, so I wanted to make sure that if something happened to me, people would be able to see it. So I walked out into the front room, and as I get closer to the gentleman, that's when I see it. He's not just bleeding from the head, but from the shoulder and knee. I asked him again if he's okay, then I offered to call an ambulance for him. Bad idea. "You don't need to be doing that," he told me. "It ain't like I killed nobody, right?
I never killed nobody. Don't go doing that. You don't need to call anyone. I just want to go home. I'm sorry. I just noticed that you're bleeding pretty badly and thought maybe you'd like someone to make sure you're okay, I replied. I didn't kill nobody. That asshole should have kept his mouth shut. He had what was coming to him. He shouldn't have said those things. But it ain't like I killed nobody. You don't need to call nobody. I just want to go home. Okay, I tell him. But you're bleeding. It ain't like I killed nobody, he replied. I swear I didn't kill nobody. Please don't call the cops. I don't need the cops. I just need to go home. I didn't kill anyone. Silence for a few minutes. He notices the phone clutched in my hand. I fell down, he blurted out. Pardon? I fell, he repeated. That's why I'm bleeding. I fell. It ain't like I killed nobody. He suddenly got up and started pacing. He was growing impatient for his cab, and I was scared. Blood was now on the chair and floor. I had the phone in my hand, and every once in a while he broke the silence with another string of incoherent babbling about how he had done nothing wrong because he hadn't killed anyone, and that I didn't need to call the cops because he was a good guy. Eventually Dave radios over that he's about 2 minutes away, and I breathe a sigh of relief. He pulled up out front. The man gets into the car and they drive off. Now I'm worried for Dave, so I call the cops. I reported what happened, and they followed the taxi cab to this guy's house where they arrested him. Turns out this guy had run away from a nearby bar after he had physically assaulted a fellow patron. To what extent, I never found out. He injured him with a sharp object, I assume a pocket knife or needle, took off running, fell and managed to find his way to the taxi office. During his time in the cab office, the police had been searching for him. So technically no, he didn't kill anyone, but he did assault and attempt to murder someone. I also found out that one of the other drivers, Steven, knew the guy from high school years ago. His name is Duke, which explains the rat tail, and he has a history of violence. He also has a history of coming home drunk and cracking his wife's skull open from time to time. Whether he had planned to that night, I couldn't say. But I'm just glad that the guy ended up in the drunk tank for the night. His wife was unharmed, and the guy who got stabbed apparently didn't die. At least, I assume he didn't, since I still see Duke every now and then walking the streets with his glorious rat tail, which means he didn't get arrested. But in all seriousness, I wish you guys could have seen this rat tail. That thing was impressive. It was winter 2012, and I was 18 or 19 at the time. I was working at a petrol station in an average-sized town in England. It was an okay job, good money for somebody who was at college at the time, and it was just a shame it was a weekend job. So while my friends were getting drunk and having fun, I was in a petrol station serving taxi drivers and the occasional drunk. It started off like any other night. Serve people, clean up, do stock, the average night shift work. Since it was winter, the night was really dark and you could only see faint outlines of people walking back and forth even with streetlights. The place where I worked was situated across the road from a pub and had an alley running beside it that led to a housing estate. Around 3 to 4 a.m. as I finished cleaning a set of shelves, I noticed a figure standing in the alley just out of the light, but just enough to hide his face, but you could make out his clothing. I initially brushed it off as somebody waiting for a taxi as it seemed harmless enough. I sat down in my chair behind the counter and looked at my phone and played some games for a bit. When I looked up it was 5 a.m. and he was still there, waiting, watching me. To make my situation worse, after 5 there was hardly any traffic or passerbys. I had that guttural feeling that he had some harmful intent. I was safe, however, as I locked in till the morning. I stared back in a trance, trying to keep an eye on whatever he would do next. After a while, I needed to use the toilet, so I went and came back thinking that he might have walked off. But he didn't. He was still there.
I then decided not to do my last job until my coworker came in to start their shift, as my last job was to take out the fire extinguishers and sand buckets. It got to be about 6 a.m. The figure faded back into the alley, and I didn't see him for the rest of the shift. When my coworker arrived, it was still dark, and I usually walked the 10 minutes back home, but I got a taxi home after that shift. I felt that the guy could be anywhere, still watching me. I told my coworkers and family members about my experience, and they said they personally haven't experienced anything like it and wouldn't like to either. I was very nervous when doing my shifts from then on, feeling like as soon as I let my guard down, he would strike, but thankfully nothing else happened after that. I quit the following summer to go to university.
I worked at a gas station for a brief period of time almost 5 years ago. During that time, I worked overnight shifts. The city that the gas station was in, I would describe as pretty quiet and small. In the overnight hours, there would never be much business. I would be the only one working for most of my shift, and I'm kind of surprised that we were even open all night at all. The gas station was along a road not too far off the highway, so it would get some traffic. There weren't really any other businesses close by though. Probably 3 weeks after I started working there, I had gotten the hang of the routine. But still, I was always a little nervous working overnights. Being by myself in the gas station, not knowing if anybody who walked in there could be dangerous, was something I thought about far too much. But through the first couple of weeks that I had worked there, nothing too unusual happened. But that all changed one night. The time was probably 2, maybe 2:30 a.m. Things were very quiet. As I sat behind the counter, I saw a car pulling into the gas station from the road. The car drove past the 4 gas pumps that we had and started driving towards the parking spaces right out front. But it didn't park there. Instead, it turned and went to the side of the building. There were a couple of extra parking spaces there. Maybe 30 seconds later, I saw somebody. It was a man, and he was walking towards the door. He opened the front door and came inside. When he did, he walked straight towards me at the counter. The man then spoke, saying that there was a problem with the free air that we had. On the side of the building, in front of one of the parking spaces, we had free air that people could use to fill their tires. The guy said that his car had terrible air pressure in the tires, and he really needed it and asked me to help. I wanted to help the guy, but I really didn't know how to fix the machine if it was in fact broken. Beyond knowing how to use the machine, I didn't know much about it. I told the man that I probably wouldn't be able to help him, but he asked that I come out and try anyways. I agreed to, and I followed the man outside the gas station. We walked out front, around to the side. When we got there, I saw the man's car. It was an SUV, and it was not parked at the space for air, but was parked like 3 spaces over instead. I also looked at his tires, and the ones that I saw appeared to have plenty of air in them. Things were starting to seem a little bit strange. Furthermore, when we got to the air pump, I picked it up to see that it was working just fine. I said to the man that it seemed to be working. He told me that when he tried it, it didn't work, and then asked me to explain to him how to use it. I started explaining it to the man. He stood right next to the building as I stood in the parking space where you would park to use the machine. As I spoke, I saw out of the corner of my eye the SUV start moving. It looked like it was backing up. I was about to ask the man if that was his car, but he told me to keep explaining. I started to, but then heard a sudden screeching of tires. When I looked to the side, I saw the SUV headed straight towards me. I jumped out of the way and got to the sidewalk next to the building just before the car would have ran me over. The car ended up hitting the air pump and then quickly turning to the side. I saw it start to back up. I got up and ran for the gas station door. The other man who had been standing talking with me had already ran away around the building towards the back of it. I got inside the gas station and went to lock the doors immediately. The car outside drove around and then back to the side. I got to the doors, locked them, and then witnessed the car speeding out of the parking lot and back onto the road. I kept the store closed for a while with the doors locked. Nobody tried to go in during that time though. I made a call to the police, who came out a short time later and took down all of the information that I could give them. We did have a few security cameras. Unfortunately, none of them were angled to show that side of the building. One of the cameras at the gas pump saw the car speeding away, but the quality was not nearly good enough to show the license plates. All I could give was the make and model of the car and a description of the man. In the end, that was enough to make me quit that job. I gave my 2 weeks notice the next day and got another job after that. Working overnights at a gas station wasn't for me, and I have a lot of respect for the people that do it. I'm not sure why those guys tried to run me over either. could have been seriously injured that night.
When I was around 22 years old, I had a scary encounter while staying at a hotel for a job. Around 2010, I was working for a traveling photography group that took church directory photos. Each photographer drove separately from all over the place. So I was in Harlan, Iowa at the time. I was staying at a hotel along with other photographers who joined me. I believe there were 4 of us, 2 guys, a girl, and myself. One morning, I went down to breakfast and was watching TV in the hotel breakfast area. Someone was also down there nearby. A guy. When he looked at me, I said, "Good morning," as I do whenever I go, just to be friendly. He said it back and we just had a polite exchange. Something you would do with a stranger you never thought you would see again. He mentioned he was staying there with his team for a construction job. I go to leave and I say something very casual like, "Well, have a good one, see you later." And he said something like, "Could we hang later?" I didn't think anything of it and just brushed it off like, yeah, maybe. I don't remember if it was the same day or not, but as I didn't work until 11 a.m., I decided to go take a nap since I didn't sleep well the night before. We tend to work from like 11 a.m. to 10 p.m. give or take depending on the size of the church, etc. While laying in my room, I kept receiving phone calls to my room phone. I wasn't used to getting calls like that ever, so I just picked up. I would say hello, but nobody would answer. After a few times, I eventually just took the receiver off and placed it beside the phone so it would stop ringing. When it was time to get up and leave, I left my room and I saw the guy was there in the hall. I waved casually, still not thinking anything of it. He asked where I was going and I said I had to go to work. My friend then showed up, one of the female photographers, and I went with her to her car as I was going to ride with her to the church. I told her about getting strange phone calls and she mentioned that she did as well. Later that night, there was a thunderstorm. My photographer group and I stood by the hotel lobby door watching the lightning. It was thundering and extremely dark. There were chances for tornadoes, so we were keeping tabs with each other. Eventually, I go to my room for the night and I hear a knock on my door. I didn't really want to answer it. However, I did, cracking the door to see who it was. It was the guy. He talked about how I said we could hang out, and I told him I was too tired after working all day long and I needed to sleep. I then shut the door. Now, I can't remember if this was the next morning or still night, but I recall him knocking again, but I wouldn't answer. I pretended to either be out or sleeping. I called my mom and started talking to her. I told her what was happening, and although I was scared, I almost acted like I wasn't when speaking with her. Then suddenly, I had a weird feeling. I whispered to my mom, "Mom, hold on a second. I need to check something." I then tiptoe as quietly over to my room door as possible. I look out the peephole and I see him. I then see him turn his head to my door as if he was listening for something. My heart started to race. I then saw him move to the side. You know how the wall sometimes goes in for the doors, so there's like an indentation in the hallway for each room? Well, he goes to the wall away from the room that juts out. I think he thought he was hiding because he would try to lean his head around the corner of the jut-out portion as if he was listening for something. I walked to the furthest side of my room quietly and whispered to my mom about how I'm scared. I called the front desk to complain like my mom suggested. I can't remember if I also texted my friend or called her, but she also complained to the front desk about the various phone calls she received. Eventually, we were given new rooms, and the construction group manager was told by the hotel about one of his guys, and that creepy guy was told to stay away from us. I even told some of the church people about that situation, and they all said if we needed to stay with them, we could. All very nice, but still strangers to me, and I didn't trust anyone at that point. I'm not sure what happened to him, as I didn't see him after that. I was a little jealous of my friend because she ended up with a hot tub in her room, and I didn't, but it was fine. However, after that, I was way more aware and careful with who I talked to and what I said. I'm a 31-year-old female states away from home on a business trip. About an hour ago, around 8:30 p.m. here, I had just gotten back to my room from a work dinner. I heard shuffling in the hallway and peeked out of the peephole. I saw a figure seemingly outside the room to the left of mine, looking outward. They were knocking the lighting and said twice quickly, "Hello, hello?" Then it sounded like the door opened and closed. I was like, okay, they must have forgotten what room they were in or something and someone let them in. I walk back to the main part of my room and I hear shuffling again. I look out again and see a figure. Can't really make out what the person looks like, but I see them on the other side of my room this time. And again hear light knocking and, "Hello, hello?" Now I'm starting to get a weird spidery sense of like, what the hell's going on here? I see the figure leave and think, okay, that was really weird. Then I again start hearing shuffling. I start walking toward the hotel room door and hear a light knock on what sounds to be my room door yet again, and I hear, "Hello, hello?" And immediately after someone attempts to open my door. Thank God I had the cross latch pulled over, not the deadbolt though. My heart stopped as I stood there and watched the door hit the latch and fall back shut. I called the front desk and informed them that someone had just tried entering my room and I'm not staying with anyone. The front desk attendant just replied back with, "That's really strange. I don't have any housekeeping up there." To which I replied, "Okay, well, that's very concerning. Can you please send someone up to check around?" The attendant then replied, "Well, there's no manager on duty." To which I asked if I should call the police instead because I was very worried, as I then started to cry a bit. She then replied that I should definitely do what I thought I needed to do. I hung up and cried for a bit, not really sure what to do. I didn't want to ask for another room because I'm too scared to leave now. 10 minutes later, the hotel phone starts ringing. I was honestly feeling really scared to answer, but I did. It was the front desk attendant, and she said the police were going to be coming to my room, and she didn't want me to panic when I heard someone knock on my door. I said okay and hung up. I just sat there and thought, how do I know if this is legit? Whoever tried to access my room had a key, otherwise how else would the door have actually opened? A few minutes later, as expected, I heard a knock. I looked out the peephole and saw 2 male officers. I didn't ask to see their IDs, which in hindsight probably would have been the smart thing to do, but I was so shaken up and not really thinking. I opened the door and they asked what was going on. I told them all that I explained above. They said it was good that I had the cross latch pulled over because the door would open if not. I then responded, "It's a hotel. What do you mean? What's the point of the access card then?" And wiggled the handle. We were in the hallway talking with my door open just for context. Then they took a pause and were like, "Oh, it automatically locks?" Again, I'm like, yeah, it's a hotel." So then they had me shut the door and open it with the key to test it. Sure enough, it didn't open without the access card. They then said that it was probably housekeeping. I then responded that the front desk attendant told me there was no housekeeping up there when I called. Plus it was 8:30 p.m. Why would housekeeping be coming by at that time unless I had requested someone to come by? Plus, I noticed housekeeping had already been done during the day because my trash was emptied and the dirty towel was gone. They immediately told me that they thought it was housekeeping and not to worry, but if anything else happened or I felt unsafe to call them. They also said that if I wanted to change rooms, they were sure the hotel would accommodate this. I said okay while crying, and they left. Now I'm sitting in my room crying, laying under the covers of my clothes. I'm sure I won't sleep tonight. I'm also too afraid to change rooms because I don't want to leave this room. I have the cross latch pulled over and the deadbolt locked. I mean, I think I'm safe. Am I being paranoid? Was it probably really just housekeeping? Should I be doing something different? Update. I'm home safe and promptly came down with a nasty bug, slowly crawling out of it. I'm really glad that I followed my gut and reacted the way I did to do what I could to stay safe. I was able to speak with the manager the next day when she came in at 11 a.m. Unfortunately, the response from her was really disappointing, just like the night shift front desk clerk and the morning shift front desk clerks when I checked out. Needless to say, I will never stay in this hotel again, and I will be avoiding this large chain as a whole. So this happened about 7 months ago. I was visiting San Diego for job interviews and staying in my favorite hotel in Sorrento Mesa. For a background, I'm a 40-year-old man and a pretty big guy. I'm 6'1" and a former strip club bouncer. Now, on to the weirdness. On my third night, I was up pretty late after hanging out with some old friends after my interviews. I got back to the hotel around 2 a.m. with some Sonny's Donuts. After eating a few, drinking a few more, and watching South Park post-COVID, I decided to have a smoke before going to bed. This made it now around 3 a.m. So I go downstairs, walk out front to the smoking area by the fountain, but there's another couple who are also staying at the hotel already there. I didn't want to impose, so I decided to just walk around the outside parts of the hotel while I smoked. I walked around the pool, the barbecue area, the basketball courts, and then started back for the side door. As I did, a black sedan drove up alongside me and stopped. The window rolled down and a tiny Asian woman asked if I knew how to get out of the parking lot and back to the street. Now from there, when she asked me, this was literally in a straight line about 150 feet in front of her, so I thought she was either drunk or just blind. So I just politely said yes, just keep going straight, and then turn left at the tree. She then asked me if I could get in the car and show her. Now again, I'm a former strip club bouncer, and this woman looked very much like the Walmart alley wonk. There was absolutely no intimidation factor whatsoever, but for some reason, I instantly felt uneasy. Again, it was literally right in front of her. She could see the road. Also, the windows were all tinted far more than they should have been, and I honestly couldn't tell if anyone else was in the car. I used the smoking as an excuse to not get in the car, but she said she didn't mind and gave me a very creepy smile. I politely declined, and again pointed out that the road was literally right there, so I'd just be walking back in 5 seconds anyway. She again asked me if I would get in and show her. This was feeling like a weird kid/ice cream truck situation. I mean, guys, really, how often do decently good-looking women just drive up and ask you to get in their car at 3 a.m. in a hotel parking lot? I mean, how often does anyone ask a big bearded guy to just hop on in the car under these circumstances? Nothing about this was right. Again, I politely declined as I finished my smoke, and was luckily already standing right at the hotel side door when all of this started, so I just went in. The woman just drove off as she rolled up the window, right exactly to the exit she asked me to show her to. So I told the front desk about it, and they said they'd keep an eye out, but I'm quite sure nothing was ever done or came of it. Just one of those things that really makes me wonder, what the hell did she want me in the car for so badly? A pretty man I'm not, so it had to just be some kind of scam. I just wonder exactly how much danger I was really in. When I first moved to New York City, I thought the hardest part would be finding an apartment. Turns out that was the easy part. The hard part was learning how to survive here, how to blend in, move fast, speak up, and not let people take advantage of you. And especially as a young woman. I'm 23 years old and I had started working at the Madison Hotel 3 months ago. It's a medium-sized place tucked in between office buildings and coffee shops in Midtown. Not fancy, but not cheap either. It gets a lot of business travelers, tourists, and sometimes people who look like they have money but don't act like it. My job is at the front desk. I work the morning shift, which means I'm usually up by 5:30 a.m. and on my feet before the sun rises. I wear a navy blazer with a name tag, pull my curly hair into a bun, and try to smile even when I don't feel like it. The job's alright. It's steady and I like meeting people from all over. Most of the guests are nice, some are rude, a few are weird. I learned to handle all of them the same way, politely, professionally, and with just enough distance to protect myself. But I really wasn't ready for William. He walked in on a Tuesday morning. I remember the exact day because it was raining, and he shook water off his umbrella right into the carpet. He wore a long gray coat, black gloves, and carried a brown leather briefcase that looked expensive. He was tall, maybe 6 feet, with silver-streaked hair and sharp features. Mid-50s, I guessed. Checking in. he said, setting the briefcase on the counter. My name's William. I found his reservation. 3 nights, king bed, breakfast included. Welcome to the Madison, Mr. William. You're in room 914, I said. Elevators are to your right. He didn't leave right away. You're new here, he said. I blinked. I am. I just started recently. You're doing great, he said, smiling. It's nice to see a friendly face in this city. I thanked him and went back to typing. He finally took his keycard and walked away. That should have been it, but he came back down later that day asking for recommendations. Restaurants, museums, places to escape the noise. I gave him a few suggestions. Again, he lingered. The next morning, he brought me a coffee. I thought you might need this, he said. I was surprised. Guests didn't usually do that. I thanked him, though something about it made me uncomfortable. Still, I didn't want to be rude. Each day after that, he found a reason to come to the desk. Sometimes he asked about the weather. Sometimes he just made small talk. He always tried to turn it personal. You from here? Got a boyfriend? What do you do when you're not behind the desk? I kept my answer short. He didn't take the hint. By the 3rd day, he was waiting in the lobby in the mornings before his meetings. He would be reading a paper, watching people, and watching me. I really like watching people, he once told me. You can learn so much about them just by observing. I smiled tight-lipped. Is that so? Sure, he said, sipping his coffee. I've already learned a lot about you, Jessica. That made my stomach twist. I told my coworker Maria. She wrinkled her nose. That's not normal, she said. Please be careful. When William checked out the 4th day, I breathed easier. He came to the desk, suitcase rolling behind him. I'll be back soon, he said. I hoped he was just being polite. I was wrong. 2 days later, he returned. He wasn't a guest this time. Just walked in and stood at the counter. Hi again, he said. Miss me? I blinked. Can I help you with something? I just wanted to say hello, he said, grinning. I was nearby. Thought I'd stop in. I forced a smile. Sir, I'm working right now. He then leaned in slightly. You don't seem happy to see me, he said. I'm just busy, I told him. He left but came back the next day, then 2 days after that, sometimes to just sit in the lobby. Other times he brought gifts, tea, a notebook, a scarf. I never accepted them, but he'd leave them on the desk and walk away. I stopped being polite. I started avoiding eye contact. He noticed. One afternoon, I caught him waiting outside. I left through the side door, heart pounding. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept checking the hallway through the peephole in my apartment. It got worse. One Saturday, I saw him on the platform at my train station. He didn't say anything, just stood there at the other end, watching me. I rode 3 extra stops and walked home on a different day. The next day, I had told my manager, David. He was concerned but unsure of what to do. He's not a guest here anymore, he said. We could ask him to leave if he shows up again, but unless he threatens you. He paused. I felt helpless, so I started documenting everything. Dates, times, what he said, where I saw him. I kept the gifts as evidence. The final straw came on a Wednesday afternoon. I was working the desk and William walked in like he owned the place. Jessica, we need to talk, he said. I stood up. No, we don't. You need to leave. He stepped closer. I care about you. I think you feel the same. My hands were shaking. I picked up the phone and dialed NYPD. I then told him, you need to leave now. He stared at me, stunned. Then he laughed. You're overreacting. No, I said loud and clear. I'm not. 2 officers arrived within 10 minutes. William, of course, tried to play it cool, acting like it was all a misunderstanding, but I showed them the log, the notes, the gifts. One officer asked if I wanted to file a report. Yes, I said. They escorted him out. It wasn't dramatic, but it was final. William hasn't come back since. Some nights I still feel nervous walking home. I still glance over my shoulder, but each day I feel a little stronger. Working at the front desk, I've learned how to smile when I don't want to, how to be polite when someone doesn't deserve it, and how to say no when someone crosses the line. Most of all, I've learned that keeping quiet doesn't keep you safe. Next time I'll speak up sooner. It's been about a year since I called the police on William. Sometimes it feels like a lifetime ago. Other times it feels just like last week. I still remember his face, the way he looked at me like I was something he owned. That look still shows up in my dreams. But life is better now, a lot better. After everything that happened, I decided I needed a change. I quit my job at the hotel 3 months after the incident. I couldn't sit behind that front desk anymore. Every time the doors opened, I felt a jolt of fear. I'd scanned the lobby for him. For weeks, I kept expecting him to come back. He never did, but the fear stayed with me. Quiet, heavy, sitting in my chest like a stone. I moved apartments too. Nothing fancy, just a small studio in Queens. I like it there. It's quieter and my neighbors are friendly. There's a little grocery store around the corner and a park where I walk in the evenings. It's really peaceful in a way Manhattan never was. I started seeing a therapist after I moved. At first, I didn't really want to go. I didn't think I needed it. But talking to someone really helped. I realized I was still carrying so much fear, anger, and shame. She told me that none of it was my fault, and I think finally I believe her. I now work at a bookstore. It's a small place locally owned with warm lights and shelves that go up to the ceiling. The owner, Dana, is kind and funny, and she treats me like a person, not just an employee. I get to help people find stories they'll love. I get to talk about books, drink tea behind the counter, and feel safe, and I never have to wear a name tag again. Sometimes I think about who I was back then. The girl behind the front desk trying to stay polite, trying to not cause trouble. I really wish I could go back and tell her that it's really okay to speak up. It's okay to protect yourself. That being nice to someone doesn't mean you owe them anything. I still check over my shoulder when I walk home. I keep my phone in my hand. I double lock my door every night. That part of me might never go away. I've accepted that. But I'm not scared all the time now. I'm stronger. I'm more careful, yes. But I'm also more sure of myself. I know what I will and won't allow. I know how to set boundaries. And I know that if anyone ever tries to cross them again, I'll be ready. William took something from me. A sense of ease, maybe. A bit of trust in the world. But he didn't take me. I'm still here. I'm still living. And finally, I feel like I'm in control of my own life again.
I don't work nights anymore, but for years I worked the night shift in a residential care facility. On weekends, I was the only person in charge of a dementia facility. It was sometimes spooky, consisting of 15 residents and only me to keep an eye on them all throughout the night. Around 3 a.m. in the morning, after doing an intentional round where I checked on all the residents and they were safe and well, I heard the doorbell ring. I got a sudden wave of goosebumps because this was a secure facility and it was the middle of the night. I went and looked out of the window, but there was nobody there. I blew it off as being a hallucination because I was exhausted most of the nights. About 10 minutes later, the doorbell rang again, so I went back to the window and checked again. Nobody was there, but I looked across the street and a strange car was parked there. I took a photo of it just in case, and then I went back to my station where I had been playing a game of cards with a delightful but very demented lady. I sat down and she looked at me and said, "What did the gentleman want, dearie?" Chills went down my spine, but I brushed it off because hallucinations are common with dementia, and this lady is particularly prone to not being oriented to time and place. However, the doorbell rang again less than 5 minutes later, and this time I was getting scared. Another one of my residents was awake and walking in the hallway, painting with a clean paintbrush to keep him occupied. I passed him on the way to the front window, and he turned to me and said, "Don't answer the door alone, he might hurt you," before continuing to pretend to paint. I looked out of the window to see the same car as before, and as I was looking around, I saw a shadow moving in front of the door. A person walked around the corner and then looked straight into the window next to me. We made direct eye contact, and it was essentially a jump scare for me, so I was startled and screamed. My residents started freaking out, and the guy on the other side of the door ran away. I called the police, and they showed up shortly after. It was straight chaos at that point, because I had 15 residents who all had been woken by the commotion, and 2 police officers in the building now also. Eventually, with the help of the 2 kind officers, I was able to get everybody settled down, but it took a while. I eventually learned from the cops that there was a woman down the road whose house was broken into. She was attacked in bed by someone who ransacked her house looking for drugs. I can't help but wonder if it was the same person from earlier that night intentionally trying to get into my facility for the drugs that are kept there. I'm grateful that our whole facility was so secure, and apparently the culprit just took the next best option. A strange part of the story that I'll never understand is how 2 of my patients knew that there was a man out there who wanted to enter and potentially hurt me. They were never close enough to the door to look out of the window and see anyone. It feels like one of those eerie guardian angel moments, or just a strange coincidence. I left that job not long after because they refused to hire a second person to work the nights, despite being understaffed according to best practice guidelines. I worked at a water treatment plant on the graveyard shift. The place was isolated, situated next to a highway that connected 2 cities about an hour apart. Nothing but some empty fields and trees were in between. It would just be me there during the night shift. My job and why I had to be there was to check the levels, adjust equipment every now and then, and basically just make sure that everything was working and it wasn't going to blow up. During my shift, I would be inside an 8-foot-tall barbed wire fence which was locked, but the access door to the rest of the facility were always open. One night at about 2:30 or 3 a.m., I was sitting in my control room area killing time on my Nintendo DS. The sound of the game was the only thing breaking the silence, and I was halfway zoning out when I heard a voice from behind me. The voice shouted out to get on the ground. I turned around and saw a guy standing there behind me holding a gun. He must have climbed the barbed wire fence to get to me, because I could see he was bleeding from several locations on his body. I must have been taking a while to comprehend what was happening, because the man yelled to get on the ground again. I didn't hesitate this time, and I dropped to my knees. He kept the gun pointed at me as he stepped closer. I remember that he kept apologizing to me, saying that he was sorry, but he had to do this. I thought that maybe he had been hired to kill me by someone, and what could I have possibly done to deserve this? He began asking for my truck keys, my wallet, and my phone. I didn't argue, and I handed everything over. Next, he tied me up. He used some duct tape that was near my desk, wrapping it around my wrists and my ankles. I still had no idea if I was going to die soon, or maybe I was being kidnapped and that's why he was tying me up. After a few minutes, the guy backed away. He apologized again, and then he turned and walked out of the room. I heard the sound of my truck starting up, and then the tires crunching the gravel as he drove away. For a moment, I just sat there, totally in shock, trying to calm myself down. The duct tape wrapped around my wrists and ankles wasn't the greatest, and I was able to free myself after a while. I used the emergency phone at the water treatment facility and called the police, and they said they would send someone right away. When the cops came, they asked me a bunch of questions, wrote down everything I could remember, and arranged for a way home for me. The next day, I found out the guy was arrested in the town over. He'd apparently escaped from an inmate custody transport a few days before, and had been on the run ever since. The police said he was desperate, probably running out of options, and that he had likely walked a long way to get to the water plant. That made sense, considering how far in the middle of nowhere the plant was. I even got all my stuff back besides the cash in my wallet, because he had been caught trying to pawn off my stuff in the next town over. I think about that night often, and have had to go to some therapy for it. The man was obviously desperate, and maybe he had thought about killing me, since it would likely have given him more time to escape, as the cops would have been called much later. There have been some other strange occurrences that happened while I was working the night shift job, but this one was easily the scariest thing that I ever experienced there. Many years ago, I used to work a night shift at a hotel in South Carolina. During the summer season, it wasn't so bad, mostly families. We had on-site security during the summer also. However, the winter months were different. The cheap weekly rates we'd offer attracted a lot of creepy people. The idea was to make money in the off-season by renting to what is known as snowbirds, older retired people who come to the beach for a month or so through the winter. It did not always work out that way though. The cheap rates made it possible for less than desirable people to become long-term residents. I've discovered more than my fair share of meth labs, broken up physical assaults, and more during the winter months. Working the night shift, I would meet some interesting people. I have a lot of stories from the night shift, but this one is the one that stands out because it did not end well for me. I began working at midnight and hung out with my friend Andrew. Andrew worked late-night maintenance shifts at this hotel and 2 other hotels that our company owned. He would regularly stop by after work and go grab us some food, and we'd hang out and talk since business was so slow. We had just ordered food, and he was getting ready to leave and go pick it up. I was just walking into the office to grab some money from my wallet to give it to Andrew when I heard the doorbell indicating a customer had entered. I had just come back and reached the doorway back to the lobby area when I saw Andrew just fall down in front of me. Next thing I knew, a guy walked around the corner and punched me in the head with a short steel pipe in his hand. It staggered me and I went on one knee. He hit me in the head with the pipe, and the only thing I remember was his partner saying that Andrew got away and found a cop, so they had to go now. I was finally able to get to my feet from the blow I received. I tried to call the police from the phone in the back office, but it was having issues. I slammed it in frustration. I was hurt, scared, and really freaking out. I realized they could come back, so I ran to lock the door. I don't know where Andrew had gone, and that worried me. I finally got the phone to work, and I told the 911 operator that I had been attacked and I needed an officer and an ambulance. I didn't unlock the front door until the cops and ambulance pulled up. It was at this time, after I found out they punched and knocked him down, that Andrew had been able to amazingly jump over the desk and escape. He luckily ran outside as a cop was driving by, which he ran to flag down for help. I ended up in the hospital ER where I had to have 10 staples in my head, and they gave me morphine for pain. I thought I had only been hit in the head once after being punched, but I was later shown the video from the hotel cameras, and the video showed a different story. After I went to one knee, the guy hit me not just one time, but 10 total times. I kept trying to grab the pipe and get up for some reason. I do not remember any of this happening. He kept punching me and hitting me with the pipe until his accomplice told me that Andrew got away and flagged down a cop. We never found out why they chose to attack me. The police thought it might be a failed robbery attempt due to Andrew getting away and me not just going down. The only other explanation I could think of was someone was getting revenge on me for one of the many incidents I had to deal with while working the night shift. For example, maybe someone was getting back at me for a physical assault that I broke up in a room, or the meth labs I had discovered. Once I recovered, I came back to work the night shift for a bit, but I had PTSD and was very nervous it might happen again, so I ended up finding a different job. They never caught the guys who did it as far as I know. I used to work night shifts at this large manufacturing facility. The night shift consisted of a very small crew, including 5 security workers and 5 of us doing administration and packing. As administration staff, I sat with security as they'd switch between patrolling and monitoring the cameras. It was usually silent and boring. One night near Halloween, I was halfway into my shift on my lunch hour break. It was chilly, and I went to my car to grab my bigger jacket and have a smoke break. I was right outside the back door where this fence is closest to the building. It's maybe 10 yards off the back door. The only light was motion activated, and I had to keep making grand arm movements to keep it on. It's all grass and shadows up to the fence, and the light doesn't really hit that far. I was watching videos on my phone, and the light went out from a lack of motion. I sat in the dark a bit, sipping my coffee and finishing my cigarette. As I was finishing, I reached up and waved to activate the light to find the ashtray, but as the light flickered on, I heard a noise on the fence across from me. We do get some animals out there, and they could get startled, but as I stood up, I heard the fence keep slightly jiggling. When I looked up, I didn't see much. The light didn't really illuminate much outside its circle on the ground, My first thought was to say hello, which I did in a questioning tone. When I spoke, the sound stopped for a moment. I squinted into the darkness trying to adjust, but it was hard with the light on. However, once the light turned off again, the light from the moon had a little bit more effect lighting up the area. The fence started jiggling again. As my eyes adjusted better, I saw movement. It looked like a person opposite me at the fence fidgeting with the links. I thought this must be a kid just trying to spook us. Maybe they were going to break in and explore, which some kids had done before without knowing the building never closed. But it wasn't common, and this was one person, alone. I was worried, so I radioed to desk security with my walkie-talkie. I informed security that we had a visitor outside the fence on the north end of the building. I've seen the monitors of camera feed, and I know this area is totally covered by cameras. They would be able to check the fence clearly. My walkie beeped back, and the security guy said, "We aren't reading any movement at the fence. Is it in the tree line?" I responded back no, and they were fiddling with the fence right in front of me. The next events all happened so fast. Security didn't even have the chance to reply to me when from the fence, I heard this massively louder thrash of the lynx, and all I saw was a figure full-on sprinting at me. I spilled my coffee all over as I rushed back inside the building. I pushed myself inside and held the knob in place, trying to keep the deadbolt in place. The knob was flicking down hard against my hold. I could hear and feel something moving against the opposite side of the door. By the time security got down to me, I had the deadbolt in place, and the knob of the door was still now. I didn't understand why the security workers weren't taking me seriously while I explained the story, until I saw the playback from the cameras. It was just me outside. There was nothing there. I immediately thought this was a big prank on me, but everyone else genuinely thought that I was the one fooling them. Upon watching the footage a second time more closely, however, we noticed the way the door handle kept moving even when I removed my hand from it. Both the inside camera and outside caught it. We also noticed right before I panicked and turned to run inside, the fence made a slight jolt as if it was pushed. There were no holes in the fence or any kind of cuts made where somebody could squeeze through. There were no creepy shadows or unexplained wisps of smoke or light or movement besides those. Nobody there wanted to admit anything happened to me. Everyone came up with logical explanations like it was tricks of the moonlight, an overactive imagination, or too much coffee. I didn't want to argue about it. They already thought that I was being weird about it. I went about finishing my shift, but nobody used the back door again that night, and it remained locked. The longest employed security employee was finishing up his shift at the desk with me in the office that night. A few minutes before clocking out, he cleared his throat and told me, "I never really liked that north end. It feels like someone's eyes are always on me." It's honestly the most he's ever said to me in the years plus I worked there, the most I ever heard him say. I felt like the statement held even more weight from that alone. I worked there another 7 months and never had another incident. I never actually went out there again though. I stopped smoking, took my breaks out in the lobby, or wasted time chatting with coworkers. I made any excuse not to go out by that door again. I've never before or since had any moments where I felt like my imagination got the better of me, and I truly believe that wasn't the case here. I keep thinking back to that door handle jerking down when I was not touching it anymore. That had to be proof I wasn't imagining the whole thing. I worked overnight at a Subway inside a 24-hour truck stop, which wasn't the most glamorous job, but it kept the bills paid. Most of the time, it was quiet, especially after the regular truckers had eaten and left for the night. I was behind the counter one night, cleaning up some stuff, when this guy came in. He was just standing there staring at the menu, and then he asked me if I had a sandwich for him. At first, I thought he might have called in an order or something, so I asked him his name to look it up. That's when he stepped forward a bit, and I saw that he was covered in blood, soaked through his shirt, splattered his jeans, and dripping onto the floor. It was dark in the store, and I didn't realize how bad it was until I saw the red. It wasn't a little bit either. He was really covered in it. I froze for a second, and then he told me that I didn't need to know his name and to just make him a sandwich. I didn't want the guy to panic, so I tried to stay calm and think of the best way to notify someone. While making his sandwich, I thought of an excuse to go to the back of the store, saying that I needed to get more lettuce since the bin was almost done. I signaled to my other coworker who was relaxing in the back before her shift started to go get the off-duty state trooper who worked security around that time. A few minutes later, I saw the trooper finally coming into the store as I was finishing up with the man's sandwich. The trooper saw the trail of blood on the floor and the guy's stare, and it was obvious that something was seriously wrong. He must have had years of experience with things like this, because he moved in slow and steady, pretending he was just there for a sandwich, and got close. But the second he got close, the guy tensed up like he was about to bolt. The trooper stepped forward and grabbed him as the guy tried to pull away, but the trooper was faster. The man covered in blood was arrested and then questioned. The guy had been stabbed, but he didn't even know how bad it was because he was in shock. Apparently, he'd stabbed someone to death earlier that night, and the shock he had made him so disoriented he didn't even realize how badly he was bleeding. He'd been driving around, gassing up his car at the pump just a few feet away, and getting food to go on the run. He was just some guy who walked in wanting a sandwich, acting like it was no big deal while covered in blood after a murder. It was a chilling experience for me having to deal with something like that while working a night shift job.
Back in the 90s when I was in high school, I was very good with my hands and worked jobs like construction, demolition, flooring, and auto mechanics. One of the jobs I did was working for a guy doing remodeling projects, like at restaurants, bars, retail shops, and typical commercial projects. I went to school during the day, of course, and would sometimes work after school or weekends. For the guy I worked for, it wasn't uncommon for him to leave me alone at a site and have a list of things for me to do alone, mostly demolition work. He picked me up one Saturday morning as I didn't have a car or license yet, so he would pick me up and drive me to sites for work and then leave me alone there. I rarely worked with his other crews as they were the more skilled laborers, so I would tear up the place before the main crew would come in and do all the remodeling. Here's the part that was my major downfall to this story. I didn't pay attention to where we were going. I was too busy talking to him, and I think we were talking about cars or something. It took a long time to get to the site, and as we drove up, it was in the middle of nowhere in the Mojave Desert. I knew we left the highway and went down a few other 2-lane highways for a long distance, but I had no idea where we were. I had a big jug of water with me because the water to the house I would be working at was off. When we pulled up to the house, I pulled all my tools out of the truck before he left, and he then drove to another site that he would be working on. He told me that he would be back to pick me up at about 5 or 6 p.m., since it should only take me until then to do what I needed to do. That was always his way of saying, I'm only paying you till this time, so you better get everything done by then. It was never unfair, and we always had a good understanding on time and tasks. He drove away, and I was at this property all alone. I walked into the house, and it was mostly empty. My job was to remove all the remaining furniture, contents, and appliances, remove all the flooring, gut the kitchen and bathroom, and remove all the wood paneling. I was used to being on sites alone and working all night, and this was in the daytime on a Saturday, but the house kind of gave me the spooks. The house was old, dark, musty, and kind of cool inside, the kind of cool that gives you the goosebumps. I started removing all the junk from the house as I normally did on a project. I tore up all the flooring next, and to my delight, everything seemed to come up with ease, and it was rip, cut, and toss. I took a big demo hammer to the kitchen and tore it apart in less than an hour. I ended up using the big jug of water that my boss had given me to wash my hands and face periodically, so by late afternoon, I was down to my last drink and had already ate everything I brought. No worries though, because I would be getting picked up in a couple of hours. I finished all my tasks and even swept the entire place so the next crew could get right to work later that week. At that time of year when I was out there, it wasn't a typical hot desert day, but you know in the desert, as soon as the sun goes down, it starts to cool rapidly. I had a flannel shirt, but that wasn't enough, and it was starting to get dark. My ride was running late, so all I could do was wait. This was the time before cell phones were common, and there was no electricity, water, or phone service in the house. I climbed up to get to the top of the roof of the house to get a better look to see if I could see something in the distance. Miles down a smaller road, I saw a few homes, but those homes were all dark. My first thought was to hike down to a neighbor's house and ask them to use a phone. I didn't want to leave though in fear of missing my ride, especially since it didn't look like anyone was home since no lights were on in any houses. I started to think about my options as darkness approached fast. My options were either to stay at the house until morning, hike what little water I had a few miles in the desert at night, or wait until early morning and hike out there to some sort of civilization. I decided my best option was to just stay and hope that my ride would show up. It also suddenly occurred to me that no one knew where I was except my boss. I don't know if he told anyone else where I was either. My family wouldn't miss me until maybe Sunday night because they knew me and how much I would work, and they never worried about me not coming home. As full darkness was all around me, I didn't have a flashlight or any way to make a fire, but luckily the moonlight was bright. It was getting cold outside, so I went back inside the empty, creepy house that somehow seemed even more creepy when mostly empty. At about 8 p.m., the batteries on my radio, which was my only source of a little light and noise, started to die. I grabbed an old wooden chair and just sat in the living room of this house doing absolutely nothing except waiting. I started to hear the wind and odd noises, which I assumed were animals in the distance. I started to shiver from the cold, and my mind might have started to play tricks on me. I saw shadows moving outside and inside the house. I also started to hear someone talking, like whispers or something. I was sure I was going crazy and got up from my chair and yelled out hello, and just as I did, I heard something fall on the other side of the house. I had enough of this creepy house, so I went to go outside again. At least in the moonlight I could see better. Off in the distance I heard noises and saw movement, but couldn't make out anything. I had a pile of tools by the edge of the house ready for when my boss picked me up, so I ran over there and grabbed a heavy pry bar. I was ready to defend myself for whoever was out there. I had to keep moving, because my undershirt and flannel shirt were not enough to keep me warm. The wind was also starting to pick up, and as far as I could see there was no lights around me. I didn't want to try to make it up on the house again out of fear of falling in the dark, but I got up on top of the gate just to try to gain a little bit of height to see if I could see some house lights nearby or car lights. My mind went to the stories that circled around at the time, about people who would come up to the Mojave Desert and bury bodies, how there were evil groups out here, and how people would go missing for no reason. Every noise had me on edge, and every shadow had my heart pounding. I knew no one was in the house, but I was sure I could hear noises from inside. I huddled up on the front porch for warmth, looking in the living room window, expecting to see someone at any moment. By around 11 p.m., I looked at my watch, thinking this was going to be a long night, as all this stuff only happened since it got dark. I didn't know how I was going to make it for another 6 hours until daybreak. Closer to midnight, I was wide awake. My eyes were only fixed on the dirt road, thinking that any time now a car would come down and maybe they could help me. I remember casually turning around to look back to the house, because all this time I kept hearing noises, but I told myself it was a rat or some animal. I saw a shadow of a person moving from the kitchen to down the hall. I jumped up from sitting and started backing my way out of the porch away from the house. As I was backing up, I tripped over the debris pile and fell down on the ground. I tried to get up, but fell again. It was like something pushed me down, or my imagination, but all of a sudden these bright lights were coming closer to me as I was laying on the ground. I saw my boss standing above me with a flashlight, wondering what I was doing on the ground. I was just so glad to see him. I wasn't mad. I just asked him what happened. He said that he was sorry, but he thought the other crew was coming to get me, and they thought he was coming, so no one actually came. He said it wasn't until later in the evening he asked the other crew leader about how far along the house I had got, and that's when they realized I was still out there. My boss felt really bad and told me he was going to pay me for the entire time I was out there. As he was driving me home, I asked about the house and told him how creepy it was. He said he didn't have any information on the house and only just knew what we were supposed to do. I don't know if I was going delusional or something, but that time I spent out there by myself, lost in the middle of the desert at night, was the scariest night of my life. What was so weird is I never saw any headlights of a car approaching. My only memory of being rescued was seeing my boss standing over me with his flashlight. I'm not exactly sure what happened that night, but it was so creepy. After that, I made sure to always keep extra batteries, a flashlight, and double the amount of liquid with me.
Back in 2007, I started a tech job with an IP DT1 long-distance company. The company is no longer around, and honestly, I don't know how they stayed in business as long as they did. It was really a pyramid scam, but thankfully I was on the IT side of things, so I didn't have to sell anything. It was a small, typical tech support call center. The customers would call in, or Verizon, Quest, etc. would call in and say DT1 lines were down or outages. I was the only female on my team, having to prove myself and show that I can do anything my male counterparts could. It didn't take long, and the customers respected me for being able to handle things. After making my mark, I decided to take the 10-hour night shifts. I worked Wednesday through Saturday from 1 p.m. to 12 a.m., an hour lunch, and after 6 p.m., I was completely alone in the whole building. The rush to get out of the office by 6 p.m. was insane. I couldn't blame them, but I decided having 3 days off was better than 2. Like I said, I was by myself for most of the night. I would have to keep an eye on emails and make sure I answered calls. It was a very slow shift. I would get a lot of video game, reading, schoolwork, and writing done during this time, but sometimes I would just wander the building, walk around just to get away from my desk for a time. I would have the VoIP phone system connected to my cell phone so no calls would be missed. This allowed me to go get a soda, go get food, and so on. One time while I was up away from my desk, I was going down to the lunchroom to grab a soda. The vending machine was on the basement floor. The basement had a wall of windows and one set of security doors. Same for the main entrance, only there was one camera facing that door. But nothing else to really make you feel very safe. I didn't like going to the basement much because the back of the building faced an acre of dark woods. There was a walking path to the woods, but for some reason they didn't install lights for the walking path. Never really sure why that was, but it didn't help the creepy factor. Sometimes I would see animals run past, but other times I felt like someone was watching me. I always tried my best to make it fast when getting a soda or snack, but sometimes it didn't feel fast enough. So, one night I was making my way down to the basement of the building to get a soda. It was a slow, dragging night, and I needed a little caffeine for a pick-me-up. I counted my money as I walked to make sure I had enough to get in and out quick. But out of the corner of my eye, I saw something dart from the glass door back into the darkness. I stopped dead in my tracks and tried to scan the forest, but like I said, it was just blackness. I felt a bit of unease, and everything told me to turn my heels and go back to my desk. But it was 9 p.m., and I had a fair bit of time left on my shift before I could blow this popsicle stand. I tried shaking the feelings off and briskly walked over to the soda machine and made my selection. The soda dropped, and as I bent down to get it, I heard a loud ping noise. It was as if someone had hit the glass with something. I stood straight up and felt the hair on the back of my neck stand up. I slowly turned around and was scared to see someone out there. But as I made the full turn, I saw once again nothing but darkness. I thought this was a good time to book it back up to the main floor. I didn't bother with the elevator. I went to the stairs and ran up them. My heart was already racing from having to go down there in the first place, then the loud bang, and now running up 2 flights of stairs. Once I was back at my desk, I sunk down in my chair and tried to calm down. It was just one noise. I was in a building with locked doors and locked inner offices. I kept saying over and over again in my head that it was nothing. I was relieved by that, but out of nowhere I got that feeling of someone watching me again. I peeked up over my cubicle wall and looked around my office. Nothing seemed out of place until I turned to face the front of the building. Outside the first set of doors was a slender, tall, dirty man. He was cupping his hands around his eyes to try and see past the reflecting of the lights inside. I dropped back down into my cubicle before he could catch sight of me. He didn't look like anyone I have ever seen at the office, and it was a little past 9 p.m. There was no good reason why he is checking out my office. As I sit in my chair, I hear the door shake. I slowly stood up and watched him pull at the handles of the doors. They didn't budge, to my relief. But as I watched him, he turned to face me. His face looked bruised or dirty. I couldn't tell which. Once his eyes locked onto mine, he started to bang harder and smack the glass. I was so scared. It was the middle of the night. I was by myself and out in the middle of this office building complex. I grabbed my headset and dialed 911. While getting the operator on the line, the guy was walking back and forth from one side of the glass doors to the next. 911, what's your emergency? The lady's voice was direct. Yes, my name is Samantha and I work at Spectrum IT Services building. I need someone to come out. There's a guy trying to break into my office building. While speaking with her, the guy disappeared from view. I tried to look in all directions, but I didn't see him. I knew that he wouldn't just walk off, not with how hard he was banging. Out of nowhere, a good-sized rock came out of nowhere and smashed against the door. I screamed and went under my desk. The operator asked what just happened, and I explained that a rock smashed against the glass door. She asked me if the glass was broken enough to let him in. I didn't want to stand up and look, but she told me to look in order to know where he was now. I crawled out from under my desk and just peeked over my wall and saw a huge crack down the first part of the door. I sank back down and told her to please have the police hurry. She said they were on their way. I have read many stories like this before, and people say that the cops couldn't get there fast enough, and they aren't kidding. It feels like time is standing still, and you can do nothing. Another smash against the door, but along with that, the sound of glass breaking. Sirens could be heard coming towards my building. It was music to my ears. I told the operator that the police had arrived and thanked her for all her support. I stood back up and looked over the cubicle wall, and the red-blue lights were flashing wildly. But the thing I didn't see was the man. The top part of the door was completely smashed, and the rock was laying on the inside of the entryway. One officer came to the front door and others were out combing the area. I could see their flashlights moving all around the parking lot. The first officer to come in the building and greet me was a very kind man. He was patient with me and let me explain what I saw happen. Soon, my boss arrived and checked on me and then the damage. At some point, my husband was called and I told him I would be escorted home by one of the officers. I took the next few days off and started to look for another job that wasn't by myself at night. When I gave my statement, I explained to the officer that the person could be partnered with an ex-coworker who was fired a few weeks prior for stealing and just not showing up. He knew when people came and went. He knew where we kept the cell phones we were selling, not under lock and key, but under a desk of the provisioner. From smartphones to Blackberries, when they were still worth buying, plus VoIP boxes and phone cards. I went on to leave this job a month later and started at a credit card machine company. It was an office full of people, still a call center, but I felt safer, especially with the security and cameras all over the building. Like I said before, this company is no longer around. It was bought up by another company, and they basically liquidated all of the funds that were worth something. So, dirty man who tried to break into my office, let's never meet again.
I'm a female, and I work as a bartender in the city. This is a job that I've had for 3 years, and I really enjoy it. I live in an apartment building only a few blocks away from the bar that I work at. I've had a couple of scary experiences though. Most of them weren't too bad, but the scariest one was only about a year ago. I usually work until pretty late at night, about 2 or 3 a.m. One night, it was really busy like it typically is at the bar that I work at. The sidewalk out front has lots of people that walk by on it as well. At maybe 1 a.m., there was a man walking by on the sidewalk, and he stopped and looked in the window. From where I am behind the bar, I have a pretty good view out of our large window that we have out front. The guy had on older sunglasses and a hat, but he appeared to be looking right at me. He had stopped and was just standing there looking inside the window. I saw him and thought it was a little weird, but just kept on working. I was really busy and I didn't have time to think about it. As some time went by, I think he left because I didn't notice him anymore. But sometime later, he returned and was once again staring at me through the window. It was a couple of minutes where I wasn't too busy, and I realized how weird this was. I just looked at him, looking at me. He didn't wave or anything. He was just staring at me through the window. He was standing maybe a foot away from it. After about 2 or 3 minutes straight, I watched him walk away. He didn't come inside to the bar at all that I know of. I certainly didn't recognize him, but then again, he was wearing sunglasses and it was dark out, so I didn't get a great look at him. Plus, I've met probably thousands of people during my years of bartending. That night, when I got off at almost 3 a.m., I walked home like usual. By now, the streets were almost completely empty despite it being a busy city. They typically were at this hour. It took me maybe 10 minutes to walk to and from work. About halfway back, I was on the sidewalk and I passed by an alley. When I passed it by, I noticed somebody was standing in the alleyway about 50 feet down. It was certainly creepy that anybody would be standing in the middle of a dark alley at that hour. I looked over just out of instinct and noticed that this was the same man. He still had on his weird sunglasses, and they weren't weird in a funny way. They were older and outdated. He was just standing there doing nothing but staring at me as I walked past. I sped up and walked faster. I couldn't believe that I was seeing him again. This was a large city, so many people lived there. I started to wonder if this man somehow knew that I would walk past. I kept my eyes out to see if the man would follow me out of the dark alley. I was nervous and felt around for my bottle of mace just to be on the safe side. As I walked away, I noticed that he did not come out of the alley though. I kept looking behind me and was not followed home. When I made it back, I felt relieved. I had never felt that nervous walking home before. I had done so many times, at all kinds of late hours too, and nothing that suspicious had ever happened. After I got home, I was really tired. I got ready for bed and then went into my bedroom. My apartment was on the 5th floor, so I was sort of high up. I shut off my lights before getting into bed and also looked out my window. I had a nice view of the city, and I looked around, but then I looked down to the street. On the sidewalk, the man was standing there. He was staring right up at me. I quickly moved away from the window and then covered it with the blinds. I didn't know how this guy knew where I lived, especially which apartment specifically was mine. I was really creeped out. After that, in the days that followed, I felt sort of paranoid. I told several friends and coworkers about it. None of them knew who the man could be, but they were also concerned for my safety. They told me I should consider going to the police, especially if I saw the guy again. But I didn't. For a while, that is. Maybe 2 or 3 weeks went by. I had just forgotten about the whole situation. Then, one night, I had gotten home from work and was getting ready for bed. I was in my bathroom washing my face when I thought I heard a noise coming from the hallway in my apartment, right outside my front door. With the water running right next to my head, I couldn't hear very well though. I turned the water off from the sink and listened. Just then is when I heard my front doorknob getting turned, but the door was luckily locked. Then there was a pause for about 30 seconds. That was followed by a knock on my front door. I just knew it was the same guy. I remembered everything, and at this hour, I didn't know who else it could be. I walked over to the door very slowly and quietly. I looked out the peephole, and sure enough, it was him. He was standing right outside my door. I wondered how he had gotten in the building. I very quietly walked into my bedroom. As I made it in the doorway, he knocked again. When I got inside of my bedroom, I went into the closet and dialed 911. I was as quiet as I could be while doing so. I explained what was going on and said that I felt that I was in danger. I was told that an officer would be there shortly. In the meantime, I was really hoping that the man wouldn't try to break in or anything. I carefully walked back to the doorway of my bedroom and listened. I heard the man trying to open the door once more, and then he knocked again. After that, there was no sounds for a good 2 or 3 minutes. I thought maybe he was gone, so I walked back over to the door and looked out the peephole again. He was still there, standing right there on the other side. Just remembering seeing the guy through the peephole right on the other side gives me the creeps. I quietly went back into my bedroom. I waited there, and a short time later, I heard multiple voices outside my door in the hallway. I walked over and looked out again. I saw the man talking with a police officer, and they walked away down the hallway. A short time after that, a police officer knocked on my front door to talk to me. Apparently, the man made up a story that he thought I had dropped some money on the ground when walking home, and he was trying to return it to me. Obviously, that was a total lie. I hadn't dropped any money. After that, I never saw the man again though. I don't know how exactly he found out where I lived, other than that he must have followed me home before without me knowing. He must have also watched my building to see me at my window before I noticed him. It's all really creepy to think about. I've worked several different jobs before finding my current career, which I love. One of those jobs was working for a cleaning company. We were a company that would go to different businesses in the area, mostly office buildings, and clean them. Sometimes there would be multiple employees sent to clean. Other times, it was just one of us. I remember that there was this one office building in particular that I was sent to clean. I worked late nights, and I enjoyed the night shifts. Going to and from work, there would be no traffic, and it was nice to be able to get my work done and leave pretty easily. However, this is not something that I would enjoy doing for a long period of time, but it was nice for a while. In this one office building, when I got there, I would be the only person in the entire building. It wasn't that big, but they did have 3 floors. There was a checklist of all the things that I needed to get done, and then I could leave. I was given access to the building, and I remember that when I first got inside, I saw that all the lights were off. I started on the first floor, and the things I needed to do were clean the floors by vacuuming, cleaning the bathrooms, and disinfect and clean a couple of other areas. It would probably take me only about 2 hours. After I finished up the first floor, I moved up to the second. Probably about 20 minutes into working on the second floor, I was vacuuming when I thought I heard the elevator. I paused and turned off the vacuum for a second. The elevator was in fact moving, and it was going up to the 3rd floor. I was only like 30 feet away from it, and suddenly I felt a little worried. I knew for a fact that nobody else was supposed to be here. After thinking about it a little, I wasn't sure at all what somebody else would be doing there. If somebody was in fact supposed to be there, I would have been informed about it. I didn't want to investigate, and I just went back to cleaning. I finished vacuuming and then cleaned the bathrooms on that floor. When I moved out to clean a window of one of the office areas, I heard a noise from the floor that I was in. My heart started racing. I tried telling myself to not be scared about it. I couldn't see to the area directly where the noises were coming from. I kept working and didn't hear anything else for several minutes, but then I heard some noises again. By this point, it was all I could think about, even as I worked. I decided to walk over to where the noises were coming from. Maybe there was a logical explanation. I walked over and at first saw nothing, but then I heard a noise again really suddenly. It sounded much closer and louder than what I had heard before. I then saw a man running from behind one wall and go down a hallway briefly before going into the stairwell. I saw him for a total of maybe 3 seconds. I didn't get a good look at him at all, but I had a feeling that he wasn't supposed to be in here. How he got in, I had no idea. I walked over to the stairwell, and when I got there, I opened up the door. I didn't hear any noise when I did. When I looked inside, I didn't see anybody either. The man must have gone up a flight of stairs or down a flight of stairs. I didn't think that he had enough time to be on another floor yet, though. I felt like he was still inside there. I yelled, asking who he was. He didn't respond. I then yelled that nobody was supposed to be in this building, and he had to leave now or else I was going to call the police. Right after I said this, I heard a door open and then shut. It was coming from down on the first level. While the man hadn't answered me, I figured that because he was on the first floor now, he was leaving. I waited in the stairwell listening for a couple of minutes before going back to the second floor and finishing up my work there. It didn't take me long to finish there before I moved up to the 3rd floor to clean that level. I got up there and did the same routine I had for the previous 2 floors. They were all pretty similar. I didn't hear any noises and things were going well. Sure, I was still going to have to report that somebody had been in the building, but I really thought that the man had left. Just when I was about finished with the 3rd floor, I was in one of the hallways when I suddenly heard footsteps. They were coming from behind me. I had absolutely no idea how the man was back up here. The footsteps behind me were quickly approaching. When they were maybe 20 feet back, I turned around. I saw just enough of the man for a second before I turned back and ran for the stairs. I knew I had no chance to make it to the elevator. When I got to the stairs, I sprinted down as fast as I could. I heard the man running down the stairs behind me. He was about 1 flight of stairs behind, so I couldn't see him. I was running as fast as I possibly could. At last, I made it to the 1st floor and sprinted out for the front doorway. I made it outside and ran to my vehicle, which was a work truck. I got inside, but some of my equipment was still inside the building. I called the police and my boss. I waited in my truck in the parking lot until the police got there. When they did, they went inside and actually came out with the man about 10 minutes later. I'm really glad that they caught him. After talking with police and my boss, I was able to go in and get my stuff and then leave. This was a pretty scary experience for me, though. I've thought about what would have happened if the man had caught up with me when he was walking up from behind. Would he have tried to hurt me? The fact that he chased after me makes me think yes. I'm just really glad that I got away.
I'm currently away from school on a co-op rotation with a major company. My company is headquartered in a larger city, and I'm working in a smaller site just north of HQ. I live in a small township in the suburbs, a gated apartment complex in a very nice area with very low crime rates. I woke up and got ready for work like normal.
When I got in my car, not only was it basically frozen over, but I noticed that I was low on gas. I decided not to risk it and fill up before work. Once my front and back windows defrosted just enough for me to see, I drove a block down the road to my usual fill-up spot. I pull up to the farthest right pump and hop out of the car. As I'm swiping my card and doing all that fun stuff, another car then pulls up. I didn't get a real good look at it honestly, but it wasn't shiny or new. I barely paid any attention until the car stopped at the pump on the other side of my own. I could hear the other driver swiping their card and entering their PIN number. I was freezing cold and just trying to hurry. I turned around and put the nozzle in the car, and I just stood there for a minute. Very foolishly, I decided to keep my back turned. I didn't want to have any contact with that person, so I just tried to pretend that nobody was there. Once I filled up, I removed the nozzle and then turned around, still keeping to myself and not even lifting my eyes. I finished the transaction and got my receipt. While it was printing, I looked up casually. I almost fell flat on the pavement when I saw a man peering around the corner of the pump just staring at me. His eyes were just really cold and unyielding. He wasn't blinking or moving, but his gaze was growing even more intense. There was something animalistic in the way he stared at me. I felt like a deer being watched by a mountain lion. The hairs on the back of my neck stood. My instincts were screaming at me to run. This all took place in the span of just a couple seconds, but it felt like a lifetime. I very quickly opened my car door. When I did so, the man moved his head, tilting it to the side to peer into my car. I didn't really consider it at the time, but I think he might have been looking to see if I was alone. I intentionally blocked the view of the inside of my car with my body and then closed the door very quickly. I then locked it immediately. So, you know how earlier I mentioned that my car was nearly frozen over? Well, by now the front and back windows were entirely clear. The side windows, however, were almost still all icy. There was a single strip of clarity in the driver's side window, a result of me rolling the window down a few moments prior in an attempt to clear it off. As I hastily buckled my seatbelt, I ventured a glance to my left. The man was still there, still staring, but he had now inched closer. I could see more of his body now than before. He was tall with dark hair and a well-built frame. He was certainly much larger than me. He seemed a few years older than me. Had it not been for those eyes, I might have even said that he was attractive. But those eyes, they were just haunting. I decided to do the logical thing and get myself the hell out of there as fast as possible. I didn't want a chance in being able to follow me. Though my work has really great security, I didn't want him knowing where I worked. I don't really know if this man was just a creep or maybe something much darker, but I don't want to find out. Ever.
I used to work at a video store in Los Angeles in the 90s. We had quite a few celebrity customers, even a few porn stars too. It was a wacky work environment that could feel pretty unsafe at times, but that unpredictability was half of the allure. I honestly loved the job and the crazy unhinged customers that came with it. There was a porn star that would come in frequently, I'll call her T, whose visits I would absolutely dread. She only seemed to come in when I was working alone. She would always ask me the same question: which of my movies do you carry? Now, she didn't ask this in any kind of unreasonable manner. T was a little older, clearly had a whole career behind her. She looked and acted a little crazy, like she was out of her mind, but she was also very obviously high. She'd come in jawing, grinding her teeth together, and her eyes would bulge out of her head like they were some prosthetic special effect. She was skinny from years of substance abuse, probably various personal issues with weight and image. T also reeked of booze and cigarettes most of the time. She would scream, "Which of my movies do you carry?" over and over again with that crackhead energy. I repeatedly told her, over and over, our computer system would only look up movies by title, not by actors or actresses. But this fact never seemed to get through to her. Every time she would start screaming at me. Remember, this is 1995, so the computer I used to look up things and check rentals was a dinosaur. But it didn't really matter because T would always forget. How in the hell can you find out which of my movies you have then? She would scream. I offered to walk her back to the adult section. She could see the stock shelves for herself, but she would always scoff, as if totally disgusted at that idea. This is where it gets bewildering, because she's a porn star who's already come into the adult film store. I'm not going in there, she yells. Lady, you're already in here. What's it gonna hurt to go scan the shelves real quick? In my head, I'm thinking she's a porn star and she won't walk the aisles and look at the covers. It made me think she was even crazier than she was leading on. What'd she think she'd find in there? Just how out of touch with reality was this woman? Anyway, she would yell at me for a bit before calming down and then leaving. But this scene played out at least a dozen times. She wasn't the worst customer I had, but she came to be the one that I dreaded the most. But then one week she didn't show up. Monday, Tuesday, the whole week went by and still no tea. It was a huge relief, but part of me wondered, did something bad happen to her? Was she getting extra spun out and would come in even more crazy? The reasonable side of me figured that she'd OD'd. When another week went by without her presence, she left my mind entirely. Fast forward a month or so, guess who comes slithering through the double doors? It's T, and she looks like hell. First off, she clearly hasn't showered for several weeks, maybe since the last time that I saw her. You could always tell when she was really unwashed because her hair would just get more and more vertical. I don't know how else to explain it, other than the grease would just hold up this overly dyed, frazzled hair. Her clothes are about the same as always, nightwear and half sporty valley mom. All of this is nothing when I see her face though. She has a huge black eye, and her eyes themselves are just completely insane. She's got pupils like dinner plates, and the outer rim, instead of white, is tinged with a deep yellow. I can't tell if she is sick or more hungover than any human I've ever seen. She comes to the counter and sparks up that same shtick she always does. What movies do you have? Where are they? How many copies? I try to be a little personable and say, hey T, it's been a while since I've seen you. We still don't have an updated system that allows me to search for those specifics. I can show you the shelves that might help you though. I'll never forget the look she gave me. Just this faraway nod, half smile with her mouth all jittery. She asked me if I was sure, to which I said yes. Then she started backing up towards the exit. Unsure of what was going on, I figured she was in the middle of an episode, would see herself out, probably disappear for another few weeks. I'd heard of mentally ill people being stuck in loops of behavior. Maybe visiting the video store was part of her loop. Boy, how wrong was I though. The door opens not 30 seconds later, and a big, tall, sharp-dressed guy strolls in. I extend a welcome, but hesitate. This guy looks pissed. He's storming right up to the counter. I ask if there's anything I can help him with. He sets his hands on the countertop and they are blinding, studded with all kinds of gold and silver, crusted diamonds in between them. He calmly explains that I'm the problem and that he's here as a solution. Huh? I start to come back with something about how I'm just at work, just an employee here. If he wants the cash in the register or the pornos in the back, he can have them. The guy laughs at me, shakes his head, then explains that I've just upset his friend who was just in here. Oh, you've gotta be kidding me. T, the crazy cracked out porn star who's been pestering me for months, somehow secured backup? I tell him that I don't know her at all. She's just a needy customer who wants to find her films. There's not an easy way for me to do that, so she'll just have to look over the titles herself. This guy cuts me off with a wave of his hand. Says he knows. He's heard every word. He's heard it so many times that he feels like it's happening to him, and now he needs to get involved. It turns out T was pretty much what I pegged her for. This guy was clearly gang or drug related, maybe even a kingpin. He acted like he was T's handler, almost like a pimp or something. She was so old there was no way he had her tricking. I mean, I guess there's a market for anything, but I got more the vibe that he had a relationship with her and for himself. Whatever the case, it's now my problem. I'm looking up at this Coke machine of a man, deciding if I should hit the security button. This is just a video store, so part of me didn't even think that would work, but it was down at the other end of the counter, and if I moved, this guy was gonna snatch me up for sure. He states T's full name, then her stage name. They were similar, probably more similar than you'd want them to be. I realized then that T was probably pretty easy to look up in the phone book, if you were clever enough. He then asked me which movies do you have with her in them. Obviously, he didn't want the same excuses I'd given before, so I threw my hands up in defeat. I logged into the computer beside me, pulled up the inventory list of the entire store, started doing it the old-fashioned way. I jotted down a short list of titles that I recognized and just started from there. It took me almost an hour to find every single tape, constantly double-checking the shelves and discount racks for hidden copies. The whole time, that guy just casually followed me around, not saying a word, just watching me gather them all up in a tub on the counter. He'd crack his knuckles, roll his neck, textbook intimidation stuff. It was like a scene from the Goodfellas. It was only after I started to pile up all the tapes that I realized just how extensive T's career was. She was a mainstream actress for like 20 years from what I could tell, and had been produced by some of the bigger studios throughout the decades. It occurred to me that this crackhead burnout probably still received checks for some of this stuff. Now the guy behind me made sense. As I said, I did it. That was it. I told him it'd take me a minute to ring them all out. He asked what I meant by that. I said a charge for all the films. I explained I couldn't just let 80 or 90 tapes just disappear from our store. The guy picks up the bin of movies with one arm, slides a pistol out of his waistband with the other, looks me up and down, sets the barrel on the counter, then asks me if we're good. I just nod, and with a sigh, tell him to take care. I called my boss after I saw them leave the parking lot, who in turn told me to call the police. Both of them showed up 20 minutes later. The police took a statement, and my boss filed a report of robbery, then fired me right there on the spot. I've thought a lot about that guy, who he was, and why they wanted those movies. I work in retail, and there are only 5 of us that work in the store, including our manager. We are a very, very tight-knit family, so we naturally have each other's backs for anything and everything. Tonight, my coworker and I were minding the store, and he needed to leave early for a dinner reservation with some friends that just got to town, so I covered the last 30 minutes alone. We work in an area that has a prominent homeless population, most of whom are wonderful people. After he left, within a few minutes, a very sketchy character came in that set my hair on end. This guy was about 6.5 feet tall, heavier set, and was generally intimidating. To add to the already scary vibe, he was holding a big gulp and a golf club, nothing else on his person. I'm a shorter, smaller female, so now I'm just on edge. He didn't hesitate to make conversation with me, and it's my job to be friendly and make sales, so I jumped in, hoping I'd learn he was harmless and coming back from a driving range or something, even though there's no golf courses within 20 miles of our workplace. Obviously, since you're reading this, I was terribly wrong. This man still had a hospital bracelet on from his 2-month-long stay in a mental hospital, was very, very interested in me and every aspect of my life. He asked what I was studying, which was psychiatry, and then he was immediately put off, as he'd had a very bad experience. And I mean literally the moment he heard the word, it's like an alarm went off in his head. His whole expression changed completely. My heart does go out to people in this position who are clearly struggling, and it's my life's mission to help people like him. But no matter how much my heart went out to him, I was still very vulnerable. He then asked me the following questions. What's your name? Where do you live? Where do you go to school? When do you work? How often do you work? When is your next break? How old are you? Do you live alone? Is anyone else here? I lied to every single question, and when he demanded my phone number, I gave him the store phone number. I also told him my name was my manager's name, so that if he tried to make contact, he would be directed to someone that is not me. Thankfully, I was able to boot him out at close. Some of my answers were pretty vague, like where I lived, and that seemed to upset him a bit. Still, he left without much issue. When I left, I'd changed my clothes and my hair to be a little less recognizable. and thank goodness that I did that, because he was waiting in the alley out back. I did my best not to notice and make it obvious, but I beelined for my car, which was in a parking lot across the street. This, unfortunately, gave him a bit of time, and he soon came wandering out of that alley. I didn't turn around. I just played it cool and stared at the crosswalk icon glowing across the street. It changed and I proceeded, just as I heard this guy sprinting up behind me. It's late. There's no one else around. I know what's about to happen. He's gonna hit me in the head or in the knee or whatever, and then drag me into that alley. My nerves break, and I finally turn back. He was standing at the edge of the sidewalk, just staring at me. Once I turn, he can see my face. He grumbles something, and then keeps following. Shit, I gave myself up now. Now he knows it's me. He even starts hollering the fake name that I gave him. I didn't respond, just picked up the pace and hustled to my car. I figured as long as I could get inside, I could probably get myself out of here. Still, I hear his shoes scuffling the asphalt, gaining on me. When I think he must literally be right behind me, I want to turn around and look, but instead, I just break into a full-on sprint. I can hear his steps stop a little and then hesitate. My outburst to get away must have caught him off guard. Just as I reach the door inside the key-in, I turn back one last time. I don't see the man, but his hand. Fingers wrapped around the handle of the golf club. It's so close that I can read some of the print on the hospital band that's hanging from his wrist. I was so terrified and reeling with shock that my knees buckled. My legs totally gave out from underneath me. As they did, the golf club went whistling overhead. It was all that prevented me from getting my brains bashed in. Not instincts, not training, just sheer terror. Fortunately, I fell backward, right into the driver's seat of my car. I yanked the door closed, locked it, then sped out of there like I stole the damn thing. I called the police and then my manager. The guy was picked up and booked that night. I even had to identify him at the station. Always, always trust your gut out there, people. I work in retail. Receiving shipments for our location is one of the things that I do for my job. Since I do the paperwork for it, I have to interact with the truck drivers who also bring the shipments in. It's a task-driven job and requires a lot of organization, but also demands a pleasant personality because of all the interaction time with the drivers. Most of them are older men in their 40s to 60. I'm a woman in her mid-20s. This is relevant. Most of the drivers are great, helpful, and professional. But there was this one who was oddly talkative all the time. Nothing really weird, but sometimes irrelevant or mildly inappropriate conversation topics, like stuff he did back in college, his ex-girlfriends, you get the picture. I just figured he was outgoing and a bit quirky, so I was friendly with him, like I am to everyone. Until a coworker, a guy, who also works in receiving, but in a different department, told me that he only ever hears this driver talking to or about me. Apparently when I'm not in the room or in earshot, then he's silent, or talking about me, asking where I am. Then a completely different coworker said he overheard this guy referring to me as his wife when I wasn't there. So after hearing all this weird shit, I become less bubbly around him, kept the conversation strictly to business. If he ever said anything about his personal life, I would just ignore it and then went about filing the paperwork. I wasn't rude to him or disrespectful, just simply stopped going out of my way to engage him in conversation. There was one time he got a little too friendly in the clerk's office, and my reaction was pretty knee-jerk. I couldn't help myself. I felt cornered because he was really laying in on the lovey-dovey stuff, right in front of other people. It was the strangest, most direct form of gaslighting I've ever seen. As if I just slide right up underneath him, like we've been dating for years. He made a comment, and I spun around and told him, and the innocent bystander clerk, that we were in no way involved, and our communication would be strictly professional from there on out. That was when he turned on me. Everything he said was an attack on my personality. They must be working you too hard. You're far less fun to be around than you used to. You used to be a happy person. I love my job. I'm very happy here. I just don't like being creeped on by old men. Eventually, he went as far to telling other people that I was unprofessional, basically a bitch, just straight up gossiping about me behind my back. And that was when I confided in my boss about how uncomfortable this guy was really making me. I actually pride myself on my outgoing nature. I'm bubbly by default, and the fact that he was causing me to have to change my personality around him, and then telling others that I was cold-hearted, simply just for keeping my distance. That was the line I drew. My boss filed a report. Everything died down after that, at least for a little while. My coworkers would still overhear something every now and again, but it seemed this old-timer was keen to who was on my side. I figured it was water under the bridge at that point, and we just let bygones be bygones. That was until the phone calls. Every day for 3 or 4 weeks. My phone would start blowing up at random times throughout the day at work, at home, and even in the middle of the night. I thought it was spam, but no one ever said anything. The number came up as unknown, so I didn't even know how to block them. Part of me had a suspicion that it had something to do with that old guy. During some of his good old day stories, he'd mistakenly copped to doing stuff exactly like this. Prank phone calls, leaving stuff on people's porches and cars, whatever. He got a kick out of messing with people he deemed to have wronged him. I started keeping tabs at work, asking my friends in other departments to keep their ears open for anything, especially anything the old guy thought was funny. I keyed them into my situation, and that if he talked to anyone about what he was doing, it'd be in a braggadocious way, and he'd be proud about it. Nothing came through the grapevine though, but every day my phone continued to ring. Some days, especially if I was at work, I just turned it off, dump it into my purse to get a little peace of mind. The more I thought about it, the more it made sense. Of course this sour old man had the time to mess with me. He drove a truck for a living. He was probably on the phone 18 hours a day. With renewed confidence, I let the calls roll off my back. I'd answer them and call the guy by name, tell him what I thought about him, then hang up. Even at work, I'd look him right in the eye, shake my phone at him, like we were long-lost pen pals. I could see it was getting underneath his skin. One night on the weekend, I woke up to my phone light. It wasn't buzzing, just the constant on and off screen. It was enough to get me. It's an unknown caller. I roll over and answer it. As I get ready to let out a string of vulgarity fly out of my mouth, I hear a loud honk outside my house, and I can also hear it through the phone. Now I'm legitimately creeped out. I get up and peek through the curtains to see this guy's truck in the middle of the street, the same truck he used for work. He hung up on me the second he saw the curtains part, then roared off into the dark. No more honks, no turnaround. I didn't know what to think. First my phone and now my house. How the hell did he learn any of this information? I didn't go to sleep that night, but started putting together as many puzzle pieces as I could. By the end of the weekend, I'd constructed a pretty solid case against this asshole. I took it straight to my boss on Monday morning. I gathered that he must have been stealing my personal information from the files at work. This was the second time I was in his office about this particular guy, so I'd already created a paper trail. When I brought the new stuff against this clown, my boss was floored. He couldn't believe it. He went on to file a second report, but this time he made a direct announcement to the entire company and other companies that we were working with. It was the start of a chain that exposed a lot of scummy weirdos harassing the office girls.
This happened about 1 year ago. I'm a 20-year-old female, and I'd gotten a new retail job at a clothing store. It was my first week, and I had went through training with my coworkers on how to work the sales floor and the register. It was a fairly busy night, and I was placed in the home/accessory department. I was halfway through my department when I had spotted a weird man looking at me. He then says to me, "Hey, can I ask you a question?" And I thought he was going to ask me about a store item. Well, I was wrong. He then asked me in a condescending tone while laughing, "Well, are you even old enough to be working here? I didn't know they hired 13 to 14-year-olds. I looked at him awkwardly and then responded back with, "Yes, sir, I'm old enough to be working here." I knew that he wanted to know my age by the tone of his voice. Then he looks at my name tag. I'll be using a fake name for privacy reasons, but my name is pretty unique. But then he says, "Faith? Is that even a real name?" I just laugh awkwardly and say yes that it is, and just continue working in my department. I get to where the pillow department is, and as I'm fixing the pillows, he's yet again behind me and then says, "Oh, what do you know? It's you again." And he then grabs a pillow, fluffing it, and then asks, "Are there any pillows here that are bigger? You see, I have a big bed and a big house, and these pillows are just way too small for me." I just looked at him kind of awkwardly, not knowing what to say, and tell him, "Well, this is all we have, sir. I'm really sorry if it's not to your liking." As I'm getting towards the end of my department, I get called up to cover my coworker's register, and when I call up the next customer, it's the creep again. He's just looking at me up and down, and I'm ringing up his items as quickly as possible, trying not to talk to him. He then says to me in a creepy tone, "You know, I'm a smell kind of guy. I like smells." And no joke, he makes a loud sniffing sound in the process, then says, "You smell so damn good right now." I just looked at him in shock, not knowing how to handle this weird situation. I just told him thank you and to have a good night, and that I have other customers waiting. He flashed me a creepy smile, then telling me, "I'll be seeing you again very soon." That's about all that happened, and luckily I didn't see him again. But damn, what a creepy ass guy and experience. Even thinking about it gives me the shivers.
I've been meaning to send my story in for a while now. I think every time I sit down to write it, my hands just hover over the keyboard, and I start questioning if it's even worth telling. But then I remember how I felt that night, that gnawing sensation deep in my gut, the way my skin prickled with adrenaline. And I figured, yeah, this does belong here, so I hope you guys enjoy my story. I've been a fan of Booze and Booze for around a year now, always looking forward to those late night uploads where I could turn the lights off, throw on my headphones, and let the stories wrap around me like a blanket. I never thought I'd have one to share, but this isn't just my story. It's something that happened to me and a coworker back when I was fresh out of high school, working late night shift at a home improvement store, a big one. I'm sure you can guess the name. Between the two of us, I think she got the worst of it. Back then, I was taking my first semester of college classes, scraping together tuition money by working at a regional hardware chain. It wasn't anything glamorous, running a register, handling inventory, mopping up whatever messes customers would leave behind, but it was pretty easy work. I liked most of my coworkers and the pay was decent, and most nights were uneventful. Keyword there being most nights. This one in particular was a pretty slow evening. Everyone was watching the clocks and none of them were moving. We were around an hour from closing. The store had that eerie, half-empty atmosphere that only big retail spaces get after dark. The lights above my head buzzed, casting this sick glow over the aisles, and the air smelled like sawdust and metal. The customers left in the building were the usual stragglers, contractors grabbing last-minute supplies, couples arguing over paint samples, that sort of thing. I was finishing up her return at customer service when she walked up to me. Let's call her Hannah. She was one of the newer hires, maybe a year or two older than me, and usually pretty upbeat. But that night she looked kind of different, tight-lipped, stiff-shouldered. Her eyes darted around like she was expecting something to lunge at her out from the shadows. "Hey," she said, low enough that I could only hear her. "Can you, walk with me for a little bit?" I raised an eyebrow. "What's up?" She swallowed and glanced over her shoulder. "I think I'm being followed." That snapped me to attention. She told me about this man, a big guy, older with a greasy baseball cap and a stare that made her skin crawl. He'd approached her in plumbing, asking her for her help to find a part. Nothing weird at first, but then he just didn't leave. Every time she tried to step away, he found another excuse to keep her there, his questions getting more off topic and more personal. Finally, she made up a reason to leave, and when she checked over her shoulder, he was still there watching her. That was 45 minutes ago. He followed her around the store, and eventually she lost him in power tools, then bolted to the nearest coworker for some kind of assistance. She didn't know where he was at now. I didn't ask any more questions. Hannah was obviously freaked out, and if there was even a chance that some creep was lurking about, I wasn't about to let her wander the store alone. Honestly, this was more exciting than anything work-related anyway, so I prefer to run interference than actually close the store. "Come on," I said, grabbing a clipboard from the counter. Let's look busy." We made our way towards the back aisles, checking inventory, scanning shelves, counting items. Occasionally, my eyes kept flicking up, sweeping the store, but I didn't see anybody out of place. Just a couple of customers near checkout. Donnie in a neon vest was restocking lumber, and one of my other friends was just dicking around on the forklift in the bay. "Are you sure he's still even here?" I whispered. Hannah hesitated. "I don't know, I just feel like he is." For some reason, I just didn't like that answer. We kept moving, aisle by aisle, her sticking close to my side. About 20 minutes later, she seemed to relax a little bit. We hadn't seen the guy at all, and she was starting to think that maybe he did indeed leave. This actually proved to be two birds with one stone because we got a lot of that light inventory work done. And then, that's when I saw him. I was standing near the aisle end cap, watching my buddy do these slow, lazy donuts in the forklift out in lumber, shaking my head at his stupidity. Then I turned back to check on Hannah, only to spot him. He was lurking at the mouth of an aisle, half shielded by the end cap display. It was a big man, mid-50s with a broad chest and slumped shoulders, dressed in these dark jeans and a windbreaker. His baseball cap was pulled really low, but I could see the way he was looking at her. I could also see that this guy was jacked beneath that jacket. Even with the extra layer, his arms were 3 times the size of mine. He stared at Hannah, fixed, unblinking. I could tell his whole body was tense, like he was just waiting for the right moment to do something. This is not good. I forced my face into something neutral and walked back to Hannah, who was maybe 30 feet away, scanning a shelf. I walked right by that weirdo, down the aisle, and put myself between her and the guy, watching from the end of the shelving. I kept my voice casual. "Hey, let's head back to customer service." She frowned at me. "What? Why?" I stepped closer, lowering my voice. "Because he's here, end of the aisle, watching you." Her face paled and I nodded at her, encouraging her that this was pretty serious. "Just walk," I murmured. "Now." She turned stiffly and started moving towards the front of the store, as quick as she could without actually running. I turned back to the aisle, ready for anything. To my relief, he wasn't right on top of me like I was expecting him to be. The man just hadn't moved. I stared him down, gripping my clipboard, fighting the urge to let my hands shake. Then I smiled, the way you do when you're trying to let somebody know that you're not afraid of them. "You need any help finding anything, sir?" His stare didn't even waver. I took a slow step toward him. "We're closing soon, just so you know." His mouth then twitched, somewhere between a grimace and a sneer. I could tell he wanted to say something back to me, but then without a word he turned and walked off, disappearing down the aisle. I stood there for a few seconds, forcing my breath to stay even, pulse pounding in my ears. I felt like a damn gunslinger. I was glad to have helped out a coworker. And then I went to go find Hannah. She was back at customer service, gripping the counter, body rigid. A small crowd of assistant managers had gathered around her. "Is he gone?" I hesitated. "I don't know, I hope so." "Jesus," she muttered, pressing her hands over her face. "That guy's been watching me all night." "Yeah, he's super creepy. He didn't even say a word to me." We waited until the store officially closed, watching the last customers leave, making sure that he wasn't among them. I didn't see him again. Maybe he had in fact left. Maybe I spooked him. Either way, I was just relieved when we locked those doors. But that relief did not last long. An hour later, the store was empty except for a few employees. Most of us were already clocked out, trickling off to our cars. I stepped outside, the night air sharp and cold, the parking lot stretching dark and quiet around me. I glanced over and saw this single car parked at the far edge of the lot. All the employees parked on a small side lot, so whoever was out there was not an employee. I knew before I even got close. I walked slowly, trying to not look too obvious, heading toward my own car, but veering just enough to get a good look. A beat-up old sedan idling low, and inside, the same man. His face was barely visible in the dim glow of the dashboard lights, but he was just sitting there, waiting. A deep instinctual alarm flared up in my brain, every nerve firing off at once. Lizard brain, fight or flight. I turned on my heel and made a beeline back to the store. The security office for the strip mall was a few doors down, tucked in between a shuttered electronics store and a laundromat. I knocked on the glass and peered between the blinds. A guy in uniform answered me, maybe late 40s, heavy set, with a bored expression on his face. Something wrong? I jerked my thumb over my shoulder. Yeah, there's a guy parked in the lot. He was inside our store earlier, acting super weird and following my coworker around. Now he's just sitting there. The security guy frowned at me. He's still there now? Yeah, far into the lot, dark sedan. He grunted. All right, stay put. I stood there as he climbed into his marked SUV and rolled out into the lot, cruising slow towards that sedan. He stopped behind it and threw his lights on. I watched from a distance as he stepped out and approached the driver's side. A tense few seconds then passed, and then the guy in the sedan just fired up his engine. He didn't speed off though. He didn't make this big scene. He just pulled out, circled the lot, and then exited onto the road, slowly. As he passed me, he looked directly at me, eyes locked onto mine, dark and bottomless. And I swear to God, I felt something press against my chest, something heavy, like he was willing me to die right there on the sidewalk, like he was memorizing me for later. Almost like he was telling me that he would see me again. I watched his taillights vanish off into the dark. My pulse was still hammering in my ears. I only realized that I'd been holding my breath when the security guy rolled back up beside me and leaned out his window. Yeah, that guy was definitely off, he said, shaking his head. Kept acting like he had some kind of business here, but wouldn't say what. Just kept asking when people left for the night. A chill then coiled up my spine. What'd you tell him? I told him to take a fucking hike, the guard said. And lucky for you, kid, he did. He eyed me for a second. You drive straight home, keep an eye out, and if you see him again, call somebody immediately. I just nodded, trying to swallow that lump in my throat. Good call bringing it to us, he added. That guy wasn't just loitering, he was definitely waiting. I didn't ask what he meant, but I heard he knew. I hurriedly went back to my car, glancing over my shoulder the whole way, half expecting that old sedan to be idling at the end of the lot again, but it was gone. The entire parking lot was now empty. I locked my doors the second I got inside and just sat there gripping the wheel, forcing myself to catch my breath. Then I pulled out, making sure to check every mirror and every side street. I also took the long way home that night, just in case. For the next few days, I was on edge. Every time I would walk to my car at night, after closing, I half expected to see that sedan parked somewhere in the lot again, headlights off, waiting. We started leaving work in pairs, sticking close to other coworkers. I even told my manager about the whole thing, and he had security do extra sweeps of the property every single night. Thankfully, that guy never came back. Poor Hannah was shaken for a while too. She completely switched up her schedule, so she wouldn't be working nights anymore, which I can't really blame her for. Some nights I wondered if that had been the plan all along, if he'd been waiting for her to leave alone, to see if she got in her car by herself. I never ended up telling her what the security guy said. I didn't want to make her any more scared than she already was. I've actually sent a story into Booze and Booze before. Maybe some of you remember it. It was about my coworker Benji and this weird night shift incident that we had together. It's been a while since I last submitted, but I figured, why not? I'll throw another one your way. And this one's even crazier. I used to work in a call center for a nationwide towing company. The kind of place that stayed open 24/7 to dispatch trucks at all hours of the day and night. The job itself was simple. Take calls, input service requests, and then send them out to the right drivers. Since I worked overnights, it was usually dead quiet, which meant I had a lot of downtime. My coworker Benji and I would have the same shifts, and we got along pretty well enough to pass those hours. Our office itself was inside this shared business complex. Nothing special, just a bunch of suites crammed together, totally empty at night. The only thing around that had any life after midnight was the 7-Eleven across the street. That place was a godsend during these long shifts. We'd head over to grab some snacks on break, vape in the parking lot before heading back into the desk. With that being said, it also brought in a little riffraff. Those that remember my last story may recall the details. I went out to use the external bathrooms, and while walking back into the office, I got jumped by a homeless dude that was hanging around one of our dumpsters. Lots of homeless flocked to the 7-Eleven at night, like moths to a flame. That night was like really any other. Calls were pretty slow, office was quiet, and then I'd say around 2 a.m., Benji and I decided to take a break. We lock up and cross the lot and started off towards the gas station. As we were walking, a car whipped into the parking lot really fast, jerking to a stop in front of the store. We both noticed it, but didn't think too much of it. Maybe just some drunk guy making a late night beer run or something. Probably needs a box of condoms, Benji said, laughing. We were halfway across the street when we heard the shouting. At first it was muffled and distant, but then a man's voice cut through the night, barking orders loud and aggressively. The car that had screeched into the lot suddenly tore back off onto the road, disappearing down a side street, tires screaming. And then, through the huge glass windows of the 7-Eleven, we saw a man in a ski mask holding a gun. Benji grabbed my arm. Holy shit. I didn't say anything. I just turned and started walking back toward the office, fast. My pulse was slamming as I kept my eyes on the store. The guy inside was moving in every direction, pointing the gun at the cashier. Then, as if in slow motion, I saw him whip his head toward us, and we weren't alone. Another guy, a second one, also in a mask, came running out of the store. He looked around and then locked eyes with us, and then sprinted straight for us. Benji and I didn't say a word, we just ran. This really felt like something straight out of Grand Theft Auto. We didn't need any logic or instruction. This was real danger. Only one move to be made, and that was just to get the fuck out. We turned around and the two guys outside the 7-Eleven locked on, their footfalls coming up behind us. One of them, the one with the gun, yelled something that I couldn't quite make out, but I don't think I really needed to hear it to understand. This was a chase. Benji was a step ahead of me, already in a full sprint across the parking lot, so I pushed my legs harder, pumping my arms and tried to keep up. Our office was close, just a couple of 100 feet away, but that distance had never felt so damn long until then. Behind us, I heard the first guy's shoe slap against the pavement. He was fast, a lot faster than me. The gunman was trailing behind him, and the other guy, the one who'd been barking orders inside, was gaining ground. I half expected to feel him grab my collar at any second. I risked taking a glance back, and it was a big mistake. The bastard was literally right there, 5 feet away, his ski mask riding up just enough for me to see his mouth twisted up into a snarl. "You're mine," he shouted. Benji reached for the door first, skidding to a stop, hands fumbling for the keypad. Come on, come on. I could hear the beeping as he punched in the code. My feet hit the landing of the building and we were almost there. But then something slammed into my back and I went down hard, my chin bouncing off the concrete. My teeth clacked together, pain exploding through my jaw. The weight of the guy was on me in an instant, his hands clawing at my jacket, trying to turn me over. Fuck! I gasped out, twisting and kicking out blindly. My shoe connected with something soft, a stomach, maybe his groin, and the guy let out this grunt, loosening his grip just enough for me to roll free. Benji was screaming my name the whole time. "Get the fuck up, dude, get up!" I scrambled to my feet, blood in my mouth, world tilting. The guy then lunged again, grabbing at my sleeve, but I ripped free, hurled myself towards the door. Benji had it open just enough for me to squeeze through, and the second I was inside, he threw his weight against it, trying to slam it shut. But the guy outside was not giving up easily. It was the other guy, the one with the gun, giving it everything he had trying to get inside. A hand then shot through the gap. Thick fingers clawed at the air trying to grab at us. Benji grunted and shoved harder. "Dude, help me!" I threw myself against the door. The guy outside let out this furious roar, pushing back, fingers scraping against my arm the whole time. For a split second, I really thought he was about to win. I thought he was gonna get it open. If that happened, we'd be fucked for sure. But then from outside, I heard, "Move!" A gunshot exploded through the night. That sound was deafening in the enclosed space. I felt the impact of it on my chest like a punch from the inside. The guy outside cursed, jerking back, and we took the chance. Benji slammed the door shut and locked it into place. Silence. I staggered backward. My hands were shaking, adrenaline pouring through me like ice water. Neither of us were hit, thankfully, so we assumed they tried to shoot the door or the building, maybe even just up in the air to scare us. Benji was panting, staring at the door. "Dude." Another bang. The guy outside punched the glass full force. Another bang. Again, bang. I could see his silhouette through the narrow windows. His breath was fogging up the glass. His posture was rigid with rage. His friend was standing right beside him, the gunman, and the two of them started circling the building, checking the windows and the other doors. "We gotta go to the back office now," Benji said, grabbing my sleeve. "Go, go!" We ran deeper into the office, past empty desks and silent cubicles. The security office was in the back, just big enough for a desk and a few filing cabinets, and one single chair. But the door was solid wood, with a steel sheet inside of it, and it had a deadbolt. We threw ourselves inside and slammed it shut, locking it immediately. Outside, that banging continued. I grabbed my phone with shaking hands and punched in 911. Operator immediately answering. 911, what's your emergency? There's two guys trying to break into our office, I said. One of them has a gun. Benji sat against the wall, gripping his knees, and his chest was heaving. Are you in a safe location? The dispatcher asked. It was kind of funny to hear that question. As a roadside assistant operator, that was literally the opening line of our script. I think so, I said. We're locked inside a back office. From outside, we heard another boom, and that sound made me jump. What the fuck? Benji hissed. I could tell he was getting agitated. I didn't have to wander for very long. I could hear weird faded beeps from outside. The keypad. They shot the damn keypad. They're trying to get in, I whispered. Benji wiped his face, sweat slick on his forehead. Shit, man, shit, this is crazy. We're like fish in a barrel. We should have never ran back in here. The dispatcher was still talking to me, but I barely heard any words she said. I was far too busy listening to the sounds of outside, the muffled voices, the hurried footsteps, the gunman cursing underneath his breath. I heard another shot, then nothing. The silence stretched on, and I could hardly take a breath. That's when I heard sirens. Red and blue lights flashed through the windows, painting the walls in frantic colors. Benji let out this breathless laugh, half hysteria, half relief. Holy shit, man. Holy shit. We stayed locked in that room until the cops banged on the door and announced themselves. That's when we finally stepped out, and I got my first real look at the damage. The front door was a complete mess. Bullet holes in the keypads, cracked spider webbing across the glass. The cops questioned us and we gave our statements, still shaking, still reeling. The two guys were long gone, disappeared off into the neighborhood, but we knew one thing for sure. They wanted us dead. And if we would have been a second slower, we would have been. The second we stepped out, it really hit me how close we'd actually been to dying. That front door was ruined. The keypad was a mangled mess of metal and shattered plastic. Bullet holes pocked the frame. A thin wisp of dust still curled from where the gunman had tried and failed to blast his way inside. A couple of the officers were already sweeping the area, flashlights cutting off through the dark. Another was waiting for us, notepad in hand. "Fellas okay?" he asked. Benji just barked out a laugh, the full weight of the situation finally washing over him. "Yeah, just fucking fantastic." I barely recognized my own voice when I spoke. Were they caught?" The cop shook his head. "They took off on foot before we arrived. We got units combing the area though, but no sign of them yet." Benji just ran a hand through his hair. Jesus Christ. The next 30 minutes were just a blur of questions and police chatter. We told him everything about the robbery, about the chase, about the fight at the door. An officer took photos of my arm where the guy had clawed at me. Another pointed out a smear of blood on the doorframe, the pavement where I fell. "Damn, they wanted in bad," one of the cops muttered, eyeing those bullet holes. "Yeah, no shit." Our boss, the owner-operator of the call center, showed up just after 3 a.m. He was an older guy, tough but fair. He looked at the damage with that kind of weary sigh that said he was already adding up the cost inside of his head. "Jesus, boys," he said, rubbing a hand over his face. "You okay?" Benji was just staring at the shot-up door, jaw tight. I nodded at him. "Yeah." Our boss exhaled. "Well, you're done for the night. Go home and get some sleep. You're both on paid leave until this mess is sorted out." We didn't argue. We were far too wrung out, too drained. Benji drove me home and we barely spoke on the way there. But when I shut my apartment door behind me and locked it, that's when I finally let myself breathe a little and realized that my hands were still shaking. Those guys had been out for blood. And if we'd been just a second slower, we would have given it to them.
The story takes place at a small hotel where I worked at. My coworker had just finished up her 8 hours and I was due to leave pretty soon. It was 10 p.m. on a weekday, so the only people working there were me and the dining lady, who also cleans and does a few other odd jobs around the hotel. We were at low occupancy, so it was dead quiet. The lobby and the sitting area were really empty. Really, my only comfort was the TV. It was an easy night, so at least I had that going for me. Then I get a call. The caller ID didn't display a 9-digit number like it usually does, but instead, it's the last 4 digits of the hotel's phone number, which does tend to happen if someone's calling from one of the phones in the hallway. Also, guest calls almost always come through the front desk phone designated for rooms, but at times they end up being directed to the superset phones. And so the caller ID will show the last 4 digits of the hotel phone number. So it wasn't out of the ordinary, just rare. So anyways, there I am enjoying the quietness, Googling random shit to pass the time, and I pick up the phone and this guy answers. He sounds like he's in his 30s, maybe early 40s. He sounds really happy. He asks me how I was doing that night, which was really refreshing for a change. I engage, even though I honestly really wasn't in the mood. He laughs and jokes around before then asking if anyone's made a noise complaint. Not to my knowledge, I tell him, wondering in the back of my mind if I had heard anything that night. So it continues rather slowly because he's chuckling behind his words. I begin to hear someone else, a woman, in the background. So I think that's cute. This guy sounds like he's having a blast with his wife, or something like that. They're probably in there getting turned as hell. Then he says,
Well, I was just calling to make sure because, you see, my mother-in-law is here with me and she can't stop laughing.
I begin to laugh a little. How nice was it for him to call out of the concern for the other guests? I hear her as he's speaking. She's a little loud, but not enough for it to penetrate the walls or anything. I tell him it's totally fine. No big deal, honestly. I expect him to say something out of relief and hang up, but he just continues. I don't remember exactly what he said, but much of it was just him reiterating.
It's just that she's laughing so much and won't stop.
I try to be as nice and understanding as I can and just insist that it's fine once again. Then he asks me,
Do you know why she's laughing?
He wants to have a conversation now. I honestly couldn't care less why his mother-in-law was laughing, but I'm a front desk agent. We do more than check people in and out. Sometimes we have to entertain. So I ask, why? Why is she laughing? And then he starts laughing. He can't spit out his words fast enough because he's freaking laughing, and I hear her too, and I'm getting annoyed and slightly uncomfortable now. I wait another few seconds before he says it.
Because I'm tickling her feet. That's why.
Looking back now, I think to myself, why didn't I just hang up on the phone right then and there? There weren't words that I could use to respond to this guy, because who the hell would, right? I was already hungry and tired. Now I was hungry, tired, confused, and mildly offended. And like an idiot, instead of shutting him down, I just laughed and said, okay? And the guy goes,
Yeah, I'm tickling my mother-in-law's feet and she loves it. She can't stop laughing.
For some reason, I just couldn't control the nervous spurts of laughter that were coming out of my mouth. I'm listening to this woman in the background who sounds like a broken record at this point. She's laughing uncontrollably while I'm crying internally.
Oh yeah,
He says.
She really loves it and I like it too.
He sort of stopped laughing at this point, and his voice then took on a really serious tone. And can you guess? I still didn't hang up the damn phone. I think at that point I was just zoning out. The dude just continues to talk about how much he's enjoying this. Good for you, I tell him, and I try to cut it off right there.
Do you like your feet tickled?
He asked me.
Tickling my mother-in-law's feet makes me a little horny. I wish it was my wife, but she's not here right now.
And that's where I kind of blinked and realized that this guy didn't call because he was concerned about a noise complaint. He's rambling on about his mother-in-law's feet while I'm at the front desk simultaneously helping other guests, and I can't put down the phone because I just can't believe I'm in this situation. Then I get the thought in the back of my mind that the mother-in-law's laughing just a bit too much. She hadn't said anything throughout the entire phone call like stop it or quit it. Her laughs were all the same, like they were on a freaking loop or something. Someone came to check in and I had to tell Feet Creep that I had to go. He sort of hesitated for a bit, like he wanted me to stay and talk a bit longer. His voice trailed off and I still heard the lady laughing in the background. I took that as my cue to hang up. I closed the blinds in the lobby and kept my ass behind the desk unless my help was desperately needed elsewhere. The dude talking about him tickling his mother-in-law's feet wasn't the thing that really scared me. It was more of the fact that the Feet Creep's call came through the superset phone without his last name and room number displayed on the caller ID. So I didn't know who was calling or if they were even in-house. That, and because I'm pretty sure that the woman in the background was definitely a recording. It was really creepy.
I've been a big fan of this channel for a long time. I had never had a story that made me think that it was worth sharing until recently. This is my first time posting something like this, but I felt like I should since it is something that will most likely stick with me forever. For context, I'm a male and I work at a gas station in the Deep South, a part of Louisiana that most people have never even heard of. I'm talking about dirt roads with no name, thick trees that seem to swallow darkness, and you might be lucky enough to see a streetlight every other mile. The little gas station that I work at is located in the trifecta of all these elements. I, of course, work the overnight shifts. The gas station doesn't see much excitement. There are either the 10 customers that come in between the hours of 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., or the random possums that decide to make the trash cans outside their personal drum set, but I digress. The night started like any other night. Make sure that the coffee is fresh, check. Make sure all the snacks, cold drinks, and beer are properly stocked, check. Now all that is left for me to do is, well, wait. I stood behind the counter, looking at inventory, listening to music, and just pacing around for the first couple of hours. You know the thing that people say, time flies? Yeah, that didn't apply to that shift. As I got bored, I decided to leave the register and check out the items on the shelf to, make sure nothing majestically sold itself. While I was on one of the aisles, I heard a man call out, "Hey, y'all open?" I turned around to see that I had 2 customers standing at the checkout. Now, I should mention this gas station does not have that fancy system that makes the doors go ding when someone comes in. Top-line security, right? So I was caught off guard that 2 customers had come in without my knowledge. I quickly walked up to the register and apologized for the wait. As we were making the usual conversation of, "Hey, how you doing?" and "Man, it's dark out here in this area," the customer asked another question that is usually always asked. "How long is it until I get to the city from here?" I answered it with the same answer that seems to automatically live in my mind rent-free. It's a good couple hours from here, just go towards the lights." Corny, I know, but that's my thing. Anyway, after scanning the customer's items, which literally was a candy bar and a bottle of water, I told them, "Hey, be careful out there, y'all. There's a tornado warning in this area until 7 a.m. and the rain's picking up." In this area, even on a clear night, it's hard to see what is ahead of you on these dark, desolate roads. As I went to look at the second customer, I realized there was no second customer anymore. I chalked it up to the guy not wanting to wait any longer and decided to just leave. I mean, from what I saw, he didn't have any items with him and probably only needed some cigarettes or something that was behind the counter. I told my customer farewell and was ready to grind out the rest of these hours, but just like a psychic, my own words had foreshadowed my fate for the night. Not long after the customer left, it might have been an hour or so, the sky could no longer hold its sorrow and just wept gallons of tears from above. To me, this is not a big deal. Bad weather, rain, and possums, yeah, I still have it out for them, happen a lot in my area. So much so that I call the experience HWA, which stands for humid, wet, and annoying. As the rain and wind picked up, I started to feel a little uneasy. Mostly because, honestly, I would rather be at my house when the rain and wind decided to battle for dominance. With that being said, the inevitable happened. The power lines were no match for the relentless punishment from the elements, and then darkness, silence, aggravation. The power had gone out, and there was no backup generator for me. I was just there, standing in a blanket of darkness so thick that it seemed to cover everything in its embrace. I called my manager to let him know that the power had gone out and asked him what I should do right now. Of course, with it being so late/early, whatever 4 a.m. means to you, there was no response. I thought about locking up and just buckling down at the gas station until the storm passed. After all, I was getting paid. But that's when I heard it. Between the thunder, between the rain, between the wind, I heard a slight crunch coming from one of the aisles further away from the entrance of the station. At first, I paid no mind to the sound. I believed it to just be store items shifting with all of the terrible weather. Darkness had a way of bending your mind, making you see and hear things that your mind usually dismisses as just the wind. But after sitting there for a while, upset of course, but getting paid, I called my manager again, but unfortunately no answer. Then, right after the light of my phone faded and my eyes were trying to adjust to the darkness, I heard it again. Movement. Movement, but this time closer, and right in between my phone call and a thunderstrike. Like I said, I have listened to this channel for years, so now I'm on high alert. Someone was in here. I was not alone. I just knew it. I tried to calm my nerves, not wanting to be that guy who overreacts, but I asked myself, can you ever really be too safe? I made a potentially dangerous and thoughtless move. I stood up and yelled, "Is anybody still in here?" I got no response. But that didn't mean that there was no one there. The air felt thick from humidity. Not just that, though. That feeling you get when you're not alone. The feeling of being watched, as cliche as it sounds. I remembered something that I knew all along. There is no ding on the door to let me know when customers enter or exit. That and the thought of that second customer came to mind. I never saw him leave. I just knew that he was there and then gone. Automatically, without a doubt, felt that something was strange, something was not right. So I did what any gas station worker would do in the pitch black. Pretended to be a ninja so that I could slowly make my way to the source of the noise without being caught. As it turns out, I'm not a ninja. The moment I stepped from behind the counter that I had been sitting behind, a voice stopped me in my tracks. "Give me what you got," was all that the void softly spoke to me. I froze, scared, too scared to say a word or move an inch. When I called out, I wasn't truly expecting a response. Soon I heard footsteps, slow but getting closer. My mind yelled, "Do something, run, charge at the sound and hope for the best." After all of that, though, I did nothing. Then his face appeared. A face that I wouldn't have seen if my manager hadn't called me back at that moment, allowing my phone to light up. The second customer. As it turns out, he never left. I pretended not to see or know that I recognized him, and again he repeated, "Come on, give me what you got, now." Still in a calm and calculating way. I spoke for the first time after noticing that I was holding my breath the whole time. "All I have is $250 in the register." He was quiet for a while, but then told me, "Give it over." I wish that I could say that I pulled out some special move that brought the guy down, allowing me to hold him until the police showed up. But this is real life. I gave him the money, and luckily for me, he accepted it. He knew that the police would not be here in these parts at this time, and with this weather, and even if called, it would take at least 30 minutes to get there. A local, I assumed. It had to be so confident. I talked to the manager and the police after all was said and done. My manager apologized that I had to go through that and also apologized for not answering sooner. I told him no worries, everyone deserves sleep. I got to leave early, and the manager closed the store for a couple of hours until the next employees came in. I was so lost in a trance after that situation that I truly believed that it still couldn't be real. That couldn't have just happened to me after a couple of years of working there. And that was that, I thought. A funny plot twist. 2 weeks later, a man was caught trying to hold up a gas station close to where my job was located. A man that I remembered from that flash of light on my phone. The only difference is, he didn't get away this time. The thing that I can really say that I've learned from all of this is, no matter how comfortable, or how much you think you know how each day will play out, always, always be on guard.
For a little backstory, this all took place when COVID-19 had shut everything down in March 2020. I was sent home from my college and I had to do with Zoom classes, and I also went back to work at the burger joint that I would work at whenever I was home on breaks. I won't say the name of the place, but it was always very busy, and during COVID it made us even busier due to us being a fast food place, so we never had to close down, but other places in the plaza did. We always had some really crazy and nasty people, but the pandemic just made everyone so much worse. At the time, we had this one regular that would come in who we thought had some mental problems multiple times a week. He would be really emotionless in his talking and just gave really blank dead stares towards everyone, and just stood there like a gargoyle, really intimidating and statuesque. He would ride his bike up to the walk-up area and look through the sliding windows until one of us got to taking his order. But he only really liked certain people to take his order and was also very cold towards us. He would order the same thing every time, but wants it fresh right out of the grease and handled by once again only certain people. And to make sure of it, he'll intensely stare at us through the pickup window. He would make the other customers outside so uncomfortable that they would walk away or they would just sit in their cars until he left. He used to only come in during the day shifts, but because days were much busier than the night shifts, and with all his demands that he would give us every time, my manager got fed up and told him to no longer come here during the day, thus now making him a night shift problem. During the week, I would work night shifts because of class, and I would usually be clocking out by 10 p.m. It was around 9:30 and I was closing my side down and starting to clean when he then rolled up on his bike. I happened to be one of the few people he let take his order, so as usual I took his order. He wants everything completely fresh, the standard list of demands. But one demand he gave was new. He always orders a side of fries with his meal, and sometimes to put the fries in the carton we either use a scooper or tongs. He asked us to use the scooper instead of the tongs because it'll give him more fries. Me just wanting him to leave and being close to leaving myself, I just went over and told the fry guy what he wanted. The fry guy just rolled his eyes, knowing how annoying this guy is, and dropped some new fries in the grease for him. The fry guy went on a break shortly after, and the night manager took over a station and waited for the fries to be ready. She didn't know it was this guy though, and she used the tongs to put the fries in the carton. She then hands me the order to pass out. The guy slides open the window, and he told me that she didn't do what he asked and that he wants more fries in his bag, since it looked like she didn't put enough in, which she put plenty in. He just didn't get his way. Once again, just wanting to leave after I'm done with him, I just oblige and go back. My coworker who I'm going to call E calls back and says that I shouldn't let him do that. I then called back saying that we've been letting him control us for months, and it's not my problem to handle a manager's problem if he has issues. My night manager hears this and sees it's the guy at the window. They then groan and they ask me what the issue is with him this time. I explained her the story and she went up to him and told him that it makes no difference what she does. He's getting his order fresh every single time by the people he wants to make his order, so to just suck it up and take the bag. She hands him the bag and then storms in the back to finish her inventory. The guy then pokes his arm and head in the window and tries to get one of the other coworkers to remake his order. Coworker and I both said that we're not going to do that since there was nothing even wrong with his food. Well, he doesn't like this, and he actually throws his bag of food inside the store and spills it all over the floor. He sees this and absolutely loses it. She runs over to the window that he's still in and then screams at him how he can't disrespect us like this, and that we for sure won't be remaking his order now, but we'll give him his money back. He then screams at her, and they actually go at it for a few minutes. I call up the night manager and she runs up to also scream at him. As he gives the guy back his money, he actually grabs her arm and then yanks her almost through the window. Now, because of the pandemic, we have these plastic dividers at the top of where the customer would be speaking to. So if that wasn't there, she would have went straight through the window. Now everyone is screaming at this guy to get the hell out of there and that we're calling the cops as he just assaulted a minor. Earlier that week, he had racial slurs screamed at her by a bunch of rednecks because she was black. I felt really bad for her dealing with two big issues that happened in such a short period of time. She broke out of his grasp and ran to the back. The guy didn't even leave. In his crazy, twisted mind, he thought he was in the right here. He was running in circles outside of our walk-up area and was actually screaming to himself about E and how he's gonna set the cops on us. He tries banging on the windows to further get our attention, but we just ignored him. 4 cop cars drove in, blocking the entrance and the exit of the drive-thru so that no one can come in or leave. They talked to him and the guy just isn't grasping that he attacked a minor and he's crazy. The owner of the company sends in the security footage of just what happened to the cops, and we set the guy on trespassing. The guy actually had to be escorted off the property because he wouldn't leave. He thankfully hasn't come in since that day, but we still see him riding around the road next to our place, and he gives us menacing looks every time he passes by, not once breaking eye contact. He really wasn't right in the head. The dead stares he would give us through the windows, the emotionless way he would speak to us, how picky he was with everything, and how quick he snapped and resorted to violence. It was insane. Very fortunately, E didn't get any injuries from the incident and was only shaken up, but she did quit a few weeks later, and I can't really blame her. I feel really bad for her. No one should ever have to deal with being assaulted by customers or having racial slurs spewed at them. She was way too young to have to deal with that. I work part-time at a grocery store, and I usually work the closing shift. About 30 minutes to close, a lady comes up to my register. She's polite, friendly, and she seemed pretty normal. She pays for her groceries, I hand her the receipt, and she leaves. Seemed normal enough. Well, about 10 minutes after we close, I headed out to my bike, but she had actually stopped me right before I left the store, claiming that she had left her phone inside the store and that she needed to get it. Well, she hadn't left her phone. It would have been in my register, and I had thoroughly cleaned it as well as its surrounding area right before I had clocked out. But I had offered to go in and check on it anyway because maybe it had dropped to the floor or something. I wanted to go home, and luckily my manager had offered to call her phone, so I headed to my bike to get going. The moment that I take the lock off my bike, she drives over to me making small talk. It's a bit weird seeing as I'm clearly trying to get home and she doesn't know me at all. She tells me that I have a cool bike, asking me where I got it. I explained to her that it's electric and that I just got it from Amazon. She tells me that she didn't know they made electric bikes, and then a few minutes later says, "I've actually been looking to get an electric bike for a while now." Really weird stuff. She asked to take a picture of my bike and then suddenly asked me why I was still wearing a mask, then going on about how it could give me sinus problems. I decide not to take it off since she's taking a photo, which I noticed the camera is aimed more at me than my bike, even though that I stepped away so that she could get a better view of the bike by itself. Unknown to me, my manager and another worker were watching this whole interaction, and after this woman finally left, they came over to me and asked if I was okay. I didn't really think too much of it, telling them that it was fine and that all she wanted to know was about my bike. I headed home, but while I was on my way there, I thought a bit more about the whole interaction. She came back to the store claiming to have lost her phone, but then had it on her the whole time. She took a picture with it. She also kept repeating my name in our conversation as often as she could, almost like she was trying to memorize it. She took a photo of me as well as my mode of transportation, all while trying to get me to take my mask off right before taking it, as if to be able to see my entire face or something. Sorta creepy. Even weirder was when I turned my back to the store to see if she was still there. I saw a police car, which after leaving the parking lot turned on its sirens and then sped off in the direction that the lady left in. Maybe I'm overthinking, but this interaction just really seems strange to me. Anyway, I want you guys to let me know if you think I'm overthinking things or if you'd be creeped out too. I'm really wondering now if it's just all in my head.
I work at a regional grocery store. I'm a 26-year-old female. I graduated from college with a master's degree in psychology and still couldn't find a job. Due to family circumstances, I wasn't able to get my PhD, which was basically the bare minimum to land any decent paying job. So I was a little stuck. I even had a hard time finding a regular job. I had applied to a bunch of lower positions, but I kept getting rejected because I was overqualified. Over and over again, people told me that I would get too bored on the job, and so they wouldn't hire me. This made me livid. After a certain point, my student loan payments were due and I really needed the money. I had to ask my cousin's friend for a job. He was the manager at this regional grocery store. Literally the only position they had available was stocking shelves on night shift. I couldn't believe myself. I was so ashamed. I felt like I'd wasted years of my life and thousands of dollars in debt just to get a job anyone could do. But either way, the job itself wasn't all that bad. I was allowed to listen to my earbuds while I worked. This meant I could turn on my favorite podcast while working. My favorite murder, if you're wondering. I must have worked there for about a year before the big change came. Previously, the store closed down at 12 in the morning, but for whatever reason, that policy got changed and it became a 24-hour store with the exception of holidays and Sunday nights. It really sucked. What used to be my podcast and stock the shelves time kept getting interrupted by stupid customers asking where things were. That was fine. I didn't mind helping people out. I worked there after all. But they would literally ask me where the most obvious grocery items were. So many times I couldn't help but think, are you literally blind or stupid? But then there was one night when a very strange man came up to me. He had really buggish eyes. Entire body was round, and he had the longest nose hair I'd ever seen on a human being. It was like he took the hair right off of his head and glued it into his nose. I was down on my knees stocking the bottom shelf with pickles when he touched my hair. I had my hair in a ponytail that night, and he lightly caressed the part of it that was touching my back. I jerked back and asked, "Excuse me?" He tried playing it off like he had arthritis, but I knew that he was just being a creep. I asked him what he wanted. He stood there for a second. He seemed to be thinking of what to say, but only one word came out of his mouth. "You." He walked up closer to me and then started to smell my shoulder. It felt so weird, and I don't think I could have been more creeped out. I told him that if he doesn't need any help finding any items, then I had work I had to be doing. But he kept standing there. He started smiling real wide and then hugged me. "It's okay, darling. I'm going to take care of you." At this point, I was screaming inside of my own head. This freak was crossing a million different lines. I pushed him off of me and ran to get my manager, who was a larger guy. He'd have no problem fighting this creep if it came to it. The creepy guy followed me as I went too. The nerve on this guy. When he saw my manager down the aisle, he must have had second thoughts because he turned around and started running away. I explained to my manager everything that had happened, and he said he'd take care of it if that guy came back again. And that creep was smart, because he waited a couple of weeks before he did come back. He waited long enough that the incident would not be on the tip of anyone's mind. I wasn't expecting him, and neither was my manager. I was standing there stocking a shelf like I always did, and all of a sudden I felt someone tugging my hair. They tugged really hard, and it really hurt my neck. They totally overpowered me and started dragging me across the floor. At this point, I hadn't even realized who it was until I looked up to see that man. He must have dragged me a solid 30 feet to the exit before someone saw what was going on. It wasn't my manager, but it was another one of the girls who worked with me. She started screaming like a banshee and running at him, and for one reason or another, he decided to run away again. I was beyond relieved. I couldn't believe that he was just going to walk up to me and start dragging me out of the store by my hair. What kind of psycho does that? It was all just truly horrifying. This was finally the incident that convinced the store owner that we had to have security if we were going to be open at night. We had a security guard somewhere on the premises after that, and I felt a lot safer. I'm still looking for a job in psychology, and I really hope I can get one soon. I felt like I really needed a break after having gone through all of this.